all our attendance. So Cam Rowe is unable to be here, and Nicole Buck is unable to be here. Ms. Tower is not here at the moment, but will be shortly. Jim Bryant, Arlen Dierks, Jennifer Tift, and Anna Ostendorf are here, in addition to Superintendent Carson Anderson. All right, so we will stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So the first item on our agenda for our workshop is to hear about the teaching strategies goal and fast bridge results. So Robin Hagel presenting virtually with information about that. So welcome, and go ahead whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you. Thank you for having me tonight. And thank you as far as we go. Well, Jess is going to present as I speak. And she's going to jump in at any time if need be as well, in case I do say something that may be incorrect or not. So we'll go ahead and get started. The first few slides of the presentation, which I think have been given to all of you, are just sharing again our vision, our core values, and our educational plan that thanks to the board, we have a direction for everything that we're doing. And tonight's presentation, I believe, should be focused mostly on the direction number 2, focusing the instruction and professional growth on improving student learning and engagement. So, and as I go through this, if you have any questions, please just ask. Sometimes it's easier for me to answer the questions as we go rather than at the end. So, all right. So our school improvement goals, this is where we're looking at for early childhood. It's the increased percentage of students demonstrating growth based on their teaching strategies goal assessment, kindergarten through 6th. It's going to be off of Fast Bridge. It's early reading, early math for kindergarten and 1st grade, and then fast track reading, fast track math for kids in 2nd through 9th grade. So, and we're looking at the growth from our fall scores in Fast Bridge to our current winter scores. So, and then 10th through 12th grade, we're looking at how many students are completing and earning credits towards graduation, and how many students, or the percentage of students that have completed a flight path so far in their education career at Red Wing High School. So this is the information based on 2 things. So this is Colville. Last year we started TS Gold, or Teaching Strategies Gold Assessment. And before that we had kindergarten, the KSEP. I can't remember what it stands for. I apologize, but it was the assessment used to see if kindergartners or eligible students for kindergarten were ready to enter kindergarten. The KSEP had about 10 to 12 pieces of information they were looking at, and the TS Gold has about 50, I believe, is what Brittany told us. So it's a much more comprehensive assessment looking at eligible students, or those eligible to enter kindergarten this year. And we do only have 1 data point to show so far for that, because it is a new assessment for us. As we move forward along the years and do it both in the fall and in the spring, we'll be getting more data points for that too, to show exactly where our students are at. So, and then Jess, okay, so again, this is our big picture: early reading and kindergarten and 1st grade, and A reading in grades 2 through 9. And there is the asterisk there by 9th grade, because we do have some students in grades 10, 11, and 12 that do still take the Fast Bridge assessments. And so those scores are also in the overall district scores. And that's what you're looking at here is the district level. So if you look at, yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought you were pausing there. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize for that.
Nope, that's okay.
The Fast Bridge, maybe I missed it, but how long have we been using this or doing this? Yeah, how long has this been in place?
I've been with the district for 6 years. We have used Fast Bridge all 6 years that I have been here. And I do think it came into play a couple of years before I got here. So before that, we had MAP testing, we had STAR testing, we had different assessments that we used. But at some point they did switch over to Fast Bridge.
Thank you for that, Clark. Thank you for that information. I always heard MCAs or MACs, whatever it is, but this is the first time in my recollection I've heard Fast Bridge. So thank you for clarifying that.
Yep, and the Fast Bridge is our district assessment to see where our students are throughout the year on our standards. The Fast Bridge and the MCA are closely connected as far as where our standards are, our benchmarks with the MCA. And so it does really show where our kids are and how they're growing throughout the year. So for kindergarten, we have from the growth aspect, when we're looking at moderate growth, it would be the 29%, the 36%, and the 20%. So that many students, right, from the 29 through the 20, those students are making at least moderate growth in their reading skills in kindergarten and first grade. And so just to explain a little bit here, the deep pink, that would be a flat growth where it's 15%. Okay. The 29% is a modest growth. The 36% in the purple is a typical growth, and the 20% is aggressive growth. So that's what those colors mean. Okay. And then over on the other side with the 2nd through 9th graders, again, 26, 43, and 21% of our kids. That's a lot of growth that our students are making right now. Our teachers are doing a wonderful job in getting our kids moving forward and learning the skills that's needed to be successful here. So, all right. And then to math, again, early math, kindergarten, first grade, and the A math 2nd through 9th should also have the asterisk on it because that is, again, some 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. This is the first year for math that all of our 9th grade students have taken this assessment. Fast Bridge, up until last year, did not even have it available for going above 8th grade. And so they have developed a test or an assessment for 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade as well. And so we are doing it in 9th grade this year because we really don't have any standardized assessments from the state or anywhere else to show the growth in our 9th grade. And so I was speaking with Mr. Nemenich one time and said, hey, I would like to do this because I want to see how our students are still learning and growing. So we are doing that in 9th grade now as well for both reading and math. But again, a lot of students still growing. The colors still mean the same as far as modest or flat, modest, typical, and aggressive go. So, okay. The next slide is our current number of students and the number of classes that were not passed the first quarter at the high school this semester in grades 9 through 12.
How does that match up to the previous first quarters of the last 5 years?
I would say it matches, unfortunately.
Like 11th grade, there's 47. I'm guessing there's probably 200 kids in the 10th, 11th grade.
Our 12th grade.
5% of them are failing.
Correct. Yes,
Pretty high.
it is. It is high, unfortunately, yes.
Turn that around.
So, yep, and
I don't want to interrupt Robin or Ms. Daigle's presentation, but Mr. Jones is here to help describe some of the things that the high school admin has been doing in that regard. So if there's time and if there's interest, we can have Mr. Jones present that as well.
Thank you, Robin.
Yep.
Said to go ahead and ask questions anytime, so that's why.
Yes. Yep, and if Mr. Chose is there and wants to answer something, I'm fine with that right now too, if he's there.
Yeah, thank you. So we did see the data, and, you know, we attacked it with a plan. Thank you, by the way, for the extra FTEs you allowed us to purchase for second semester. So we were able to take some of those FTEs. And I think the biggest thing is when I looked at that, I noticed that there's going to be many kids in the next couple of years that will be in jeopardy of walking across that stage out there on the football field, right? And getting their diploma. And it kind of made my heart ache. So we started to make a plan, and we thought, you know, what a great way to do this. We partnered with Jess Whitcomb, and we created a portion of our REACH program and created what's called a REACH Success Lab. We identified the kids that were being in jeopardy, and they'd have an opportunity to earn credit, work on those personal life goals, and also earn credits in the Success Lab in conjunction with our credit recovery class. And so that's one thing we've done. We also created a guided study hall. So Mary Nemenich is teaching this. So we identified some kids with the data that Robin is doing a great job, by the way, of getting us data that we could make an effective change with. We identified students and put them in this guided study hall with Ms. Nemenich. And those, now we don't know how effective it is yet, but I am seeing the kids are going to the class and seem to be working hard. One of the things I have noticed from that is that the kids that we've identified input some of these classes, I'm not seeing them in behavior situations as much, so they must be feeling more successful because of it. The other thing we've done is we have this monthly tier 1 kind of a think tank, and it's a couple of school psychologists, counselors, myself. We meet once a month, and we from Robin's data, we noticed that a lot of our kids struggle in the area of reading. So we implemented a tier 1 reading strategy all the way across the building. It sounds simple, annotating or marking text, but we were able to implement that. Some of the other things we've been doing is we've been adjusting 504 plans. We've been calling IEP meetings when needed. We started a check-in and check-out process with our SAT team. Do you guys know what SAT stands for? Student Assistance Team. And it's a group of educators that meet once a week around grades 7 to 8, and then another group around 9 through 12. We come up with interventions and stuff that's needed. We also partnered with Hope Coalition and brought in a youth advocate into our building. Thanks to Karsten, he was able to allow that. And the youth advocate has just started, but I think that's going to be another thing that's going to help with this. We have weekly attendance meetings. From those weekly attendance meetings, we're able to partner with the county. And now we have a county social worker that's attached just to truancy. And you know, attendance really is the #1 indicator of whether you're successful or not. So now we have Melissa, who's our social worker that from the county that comes into the building at least once a week and works with kids that are struggling with attendance. We do schedule many parents, staff, and student meetings and attach a plan to those meetings. And then lastly, we have after-school tutoring with Hispanic outreach at Prairie Island. Now that program's been going on for a while, but that's also going to affect the amount of apps. One of the things I'd like to do is kind of in the future is I'd like to work closer with youth outreach and increase the amount of students that get mentored. So those are just a few of the things that we've been doing. Karsten asked me to do this morning and put together a bulleted list. So there you go.
Thank you. Be curious now. You only must test them in the first quarter. So next year, we'll hear, and hopefully these numbers will go down on the failed classes based upon those strategies that you just talked about, Mr. Schultz. So we'll look forward to hearing about that. And the other thing was interesting. It was interesting that you mentioned REACH. You know, I haven't followed REACH very much. I was on Channel 9 the other day with Hutchinson School. So if you haven't seen that, go to Channel 9 and watch that. That's pretty interesting. Because, you know, it's got to be similar to what you're doing here.
Got some pretty exciting news. So Reach Hutch is where we emulate Reach Hutch. Reach Hutch. Chad Harlander is the inventor of Reach. And that is a fellow. So Karsten, a few years ago, and Joe Dzerzky said, hey, Jay, why don't you go look at this program? So we went out there and we've been working with him. So there's a youth minister in town that runs Fusion, and he reached out. I talked to him a couple weeks ago. I said, check this out. Do you know anybody in Hutch? So he reached out to Hutch, and now he's excited to bring that community aspect into our REACH program for next year. So I'm really, really excited that we're going to add that aspect into it. That's one of the things that makes REACH Hutch so successful is every Wednesday they have an outside community person come in and really capture the kids in a lesson around community and what's needed to be successful. So thanks for sharing that, Jim.
Yep. I like your analogy. Reached out for reach. So, that was pretty neat. Thank you.
So these failed classes, this was from first semester or first quarter of this year?
First semester.
A semester, you said quarter, so, oh, thank you.
And then the last slide that we have is about flight paths. And so this is, I think we have the 3-year data here, but I think this is truly the 3rd year we've really implemented our flight paths. Is that correct, Jess?
Yep.
Okay. And so you can see that we've had more flight paths completed each year. Now, this year so far, we've had 212 flight paths completed, knowing that students can complete more than one flight path. So some have, completed 2, others 1, some are still working on it. So, yes, Holly?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a teacher nerd. Okay, what does it mean to complete a flight path? What all entails in completing a flight path?
Okay, so I'm going to do my best, but Jess has this down better than I do. So there's the 4-3-2-1, which means that you take 4 core classes that go towards your flight path, or 4 classes that are your interest, 3 classes that are your passion, 2, oh gosh, Jess, help me with this, please.
So you'll have, so you'll have the 2 that are aligned activities, which could be having an internship. It could be a club that you participate in after school. They are 2 activities that align to your interest area. And then the last one would be a job shadow or an internship. So because kids don't always have an internship spot open in their schedule, the last one would be job shadowing. Could be an online where we hook somebody up from Rochester that a kid can watch them through job shadowing or a mentor instead of the internship, because that takes a lot of hours in somebody's schedule. But we're hoping that as kids plan that we can have that opportunity for more kids.
So thank you. So for the job shadow or internship, how many hours does that require?
At this point, it kind of depends on the internship and the interest area and what our community can offer. So like as we build our program on the other side, we don't always have that specific interest area located in town. We're doing our best to build the list of internships and availability, but it kind of depends on, for instance, like the Mayo internships are a lot more than having a kid go through the accounting. Then they're in 4 different partnerships instead of staying with one the whole time, so they can kind of see how accounting works. But if you sign up for internship, you have a class in your schedule, and then you're also getting coached by Mick Wenland on how do you show up for an internship, how do you be on time, what are the things that you need to do in order for our community to welcome us back again.
Okay, I have 2 more questions. So do students get like a certificate? Does it go anywhere on their transcript that they completed the flight paths?
At this point, I guess it's not like on their transcript, but it's in Synergy, and Robin probably can speak better to this. But as a counselor, the counselors are so that we can pull that data and know how many we have. It is in our Synergy and in our back end, but we don't necessarily have a certificate. We are wanting to work towards that, where kids are kind of proud to say, I completed this flight path, or maybe I have the t-shirt in the manufacturing flight path. And so like that is definitely a growth area where they can pick in 10th and 11th grade and really say like, this is what I'm working towards, even though we know they can switch at any time. But that is something that Mick and I get very excited about, that would be a sense of pride to be in the high school.
So the grade levels that have completed then are which grade levels?
So it kind of depends on, you can complete it by junior year. Some 10th graders, as always, you'll have those overachievers that have a lot of classes that are done or have really focused their classes. Like if they really love woodworking, they've focused all of their classes there. So they already have that alignment when they get to 10th or 11th grade. We're hoping that most kids actually are almost done with a flight path by 11th grade so that their internship can be in that area. And so that's part of the reason why we wanted to push that back and not have it be really hard to complete a flight path. That's not the idea of it. The idea of it is to focus how I take classes so that I can try something and either love it or hate it when I get out of school, so that I know that I'm making a more informed choice. It doesn't mean it's the choice.
How many flight paths can a kid take? Can a student take?
Well, there are 4 different ones that you could kind of pathways that you can take. I mean, if you wanted to like check all the boxes to all of them, you probably could get it done because some are closely aligned to others. So you could do that. I don't know that we would counsel kids to do that because it's, again, the point of it is to try to not get them to check off the boxes, but to say, I think the aha moment that we had with flight paths are those 3 classes that are passion classes are my favorite part of it. Like, and that's pairing okay, I have this focus in one area, but my passion of these 3 other courses might not align there. That might be my hobby. I might use that in my future, but really asking kids to branch out and try something without pressure on that. So those 3 passion courses we kind of don't want you to align those with your flight paths. We want you to test something outside of that to see if that shifts your direction. So I think we really want to say, yeah, that's great that this is what you want to be right now, or you feel like this is your interest right now, but we want you to taste everything.
Is there an opportunity for students to earn a college credit at some point in the building of this? So the flight paths, you would at the end have a college credit or a Southeast Tech credit or something so that everybody that finishes it has an even higher incentive to keep pushing?
Yeah, actually, I just happened to, because of our PD on Monday, we had Sam Oak, the director of equity and inclusion for Prairie Lake schools. He gave us a lot of data, and because of that, it was great. It triggered our teachers into wanting the data that he presented to us. So I actually got to pull up the percentage of kids that are taking concurrent enrollment classes in the district right now. And statewide, they're per class or per cohort, it's about 32% of kids. In our right now, this year, we have 71% of, it could be juniors or seniors, but 71% taking a concurrent enrollment class. And I think I would credit I know that our math courses have really tried to do that concurrent enrollment and make sure that if one teacher leaves the district that had the ability to teach those concurrent enrollment, Tammy Mickelson's been awesome about trying to get somebody else in to take those credits needed in order to teach those courses. We have some in the world language. We also have some in our English department. Our teachers have worked really hard to be able to offer that for kids. So that percentage, I knew it was higher than most. I did not know it was 71% when I looked at that.
And just
But
kind
it's
of
not connected to, oh, sorry, Robin. I was just gonna say, but it's not connected to flight paths. That's something completely different.
I would say that there's an ability for everybody to do it. I would say the counseling that happens with our counselors and with Mick Wendland when they meet with students is more of what do you need and want, and then how do we put that in a package for you to say, like, you could try this and you could try this, and making sure that the kids are aware of their options and what that gives them going forward. So what I love is the backwards planning, because sometimes we're like, well, I just picked that class because my friends are in it, or I liked that teacher last year. The point of it is to go, I want that thing, at least right now. How do I pull back from that and backwards plan?
Okay, that's really good, because I'm thinking big picture, right? We can have all these great numbers of kids that have completed flight path.
Yep.
What is it getting kids? How is it helping Red Wing? How is it helping Red Wing Public Schools? So that's just kind of where my questions were coming from, but I thank both of you for the information.
Yeah, and Mick Wendland also, he doesn't toot his own horn enough when he comes to talk to you all, but there have been multiple districts that are asking to come and shadow him to see kind of how our flight paths are lining up to what they're doing, and how are we bringing that down to the elementary level. People are excited about that, so I thank Mick for that work. Sorry, Robin.
That's okay.
I get excited about flight paths.
I was just going to add that we do also have one CIS class in the technical education department.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to that one just because personally that's where my kids all spent their time. So and it's a wonderful one. So.
Mr. Ryan has a question?
Thank you. I'll wrap up. I know we have other things here, but I'm very excited about the flight path. It's great to see it growing. I like what you said, 11th grade, gets them into some internships probably into the senior year. I hope the thing grows. It helps the students. It helps the community. We're all aware of the labor shortages out there. Every place, so kids learning more about what the community's about, what they're looking at, what's available, what they want to look at for their interest is wonderful. I hope to see this doubled sometime down the road. Thank you.
As one last thing, we are also looking into apprenticeship to see how that can go, because we have a decent amount of kids that want to become electricians this year for some reason. We just have a bunch of them, and they're wanting to get their hours in. And so how do we make that happen for kids without holding them back? Or we want them to stay with us and also be able to access apprenticeships. So we're looking at what do we need to, paperwork we need to file in order to make sure that's okay.
They see you or Mick about that? Jess, who's this group of kids students that you talk about?
So counselors will meet with them, and Mick will also meet with them because he has them in his internship class, but they'll seek him out because one student will say, hey, he talked to me, and then they'll show up in his room, and then that's how we get the information to make it grow.
Wonderful.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Before we end on this, Ms. Pagel, could you just talk a little bit more about how the FastBridge test is administered, or because it happens multiple times throughout each year, correct?
It's 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring. So are you asking how does it happen in the classroom, or I guess I'm not really sure what you're asking.
That was just what I meant is,
Okay.
that we're testing the kids throughout the year, so we can see that growth or those changes a little bit more quickly than like with the MCAs, which is not even necessarily every year, depending on the grade level. What do you see for comparisons between like this year's growth in those reading and math scores and like previous years, especially because, you know, COVID has been so chaotic? Are we seeing that those trends of like what percentages of kids are meeting that moderate growth or not growing? Is that pretty much on par with how it's been in previous years, or are we lagging behind in that or ahead? Do you have a sense of where we fall with that?
I can give you a quick general answer because I did do some little looking, but if you want detailed information, I'm happy to come back in a few weeks and give you that as well. But overall, I'd say we are on par or even doing honestly a little bit better in some grades than we have in the past with some of our with our scores. So.
And then Ms. Tips has a question.
How is yours about this?
Yeah.
Something else. Go ahead. You go first.
Okay, you don't mind?
I'm sorry, I didn't know you still had.
No, I put it up because you generated a thought in my head.
Okay.
So, we do fast testing in, you know, most districts in the state do fast testing fall, winter, and spring. And it's, our students do it on their iPad, right in the classroom. What we have identified is that kids who are not passing the MCA, we can see why in the fast test.
Oh.
Is that, I'm trying to make the connection for the two. So the MCA is your achievement test. Are they actually at grade level? No. How come? The fast test tells you why. They're missing this, they're missing this, they're missing this. And we're then, as teachers or special ed teachers, we go in and we group around what skills they're deficit in and what skills they have strength in. That's the goal. It doesn't always work because on top of that we have curriculum, and I know that's the same in Red Wing. On top of that, you have your curriculum you have to teach, so it's hard. But I was appreciating that you brought this to the table because we hear fast scores like, oh, they're going up, or they're, you know, they're really good. Yes, and how do then they correlate with MCAs? I don't know what the end answer is on MCA testing, and if I was in the state legislature, I'd have a lot of comments about it. But you know, it's kind of the beast that is supposed to be the end game of the year. We don't like it. The scores come late. You know, there's a lot of things that don't work well with it, but that's how fast relates to. So when I do an assessment on a student, I'll say they've not passed their MCAs for the last 5 years. What do their fast scores say? Is there a connection? Yeah, there's a connection. They definitely struggle in X, Y, and Z. So I was just trying to bring that all together for everybody.
I would say also the trend, we're coming in a little bit lower than we all know why that is, but we're coming in a little bit lower, but the trends are following. Is that fair, Robin?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Jess. I just want to say thank you to all of you for working on flight paths, and I wanted to just go back to Mr. Chose and thank him and the high school admin. As part of youth outreach, I'm lucky enough to be on the REACH team, and that group is just doing an amazing job responding to the needs at the high school, and so I appreciate them working on that, and I'm lucky enough to work with some of the students who are in the REACH Success Lab, and it has made a huge difference over the past month. They're excited about school, to have goals, something they're trying to reach for and work toward, and it's really exciting. So I'm thankful for that. Thank you for that and for putting that program together and continuing to grow the REACH program.
Well, thank you very much for presenting and for all of the work that you do.
Thanks, Robin. Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
All right, so we are moving on to more discussion of our grade configurations and transportation options. So I believe Superintendent Anderson has information to present about those things?
I'll briefly give an overview. I know that Nikki Girl from Center for Efficient School Efficiency is on the call. I'm not sure if Sarah is here as well.
Yep.
Good deal. They were both very busy today because they helped with routing, including some places in the cities that had a lot of snow issues. So I know it's been a long day for you two, but I really appreciate both of you being here. So as everyone knows here on the board, we've had some meetings to discuss grade configurations for next year. A big factor related to that has to do with transportation. It needs to mesh well. We need to figure out our grade configurations, if we have K4 schools or K1 and 2-4 schools. We also need to decide if we want a 1-tier or a 2-tier system, starting times and ending times, which level goes first, as well as make some personnel reductions just because of our budget reconciliation needs. So we have a lot to do, and the goal is still to get everything done in March. February or March, it'll be March. So what I did is I have the two options that are currently on the table. The board may decide to pursue another option. So we realize that. The first option, with each of the two options, I include the pros and cons that we've identified. And then since the last meeting, I included a preliminary example of transportation implications with that particular option. And I really want to emphasize the point preliminary because, there's some times here that would need to be adjusted and tightened, as we get further along with the process. But at least gives us an idea. So option one would be to have grade level centers. Early childhood and Sunnyside would be a K1 building. Burnside would be 2 through 4. Twin Bluff would be a 5-7 school. Reading High School would be 12. Option two, we would have 2 K4 schools, one at Sunnyside and one at Burnside. Once again, school for grades 5 through 7 at Twin Bluff, and then 8 through 12 at the high school. So I think there's general agreement that we want a middle school back in Twin Bluff. The only question out there is a 5-7 or a 6-8. Both of these options show a 5-7. So, as far as transportation issues, if you go back to option one, the preliminary example of transportation for the grade level centers, you can see some notes from CISO in terms of, this particular plan shows K through 7 writing together. I did ask them to do some bus load counts and to consider having the Twin Bluff kids on the high school routes like we've done in the past. You can see where Colville and St. John's kids would be writing. The CISO explained that we would need to add some buses due to time constraints, with Burnside weighing one to the district and the others on this end. Students would be on buses in some cases for more than an hour, and it'd be pretty early pickup times. You can see some of my comments. And again, I want to emphasize that we need to make some additional adjustments, especially for the times. The costs that CISO came up with would show an increase of about $200,000 in transportation costs compared to our current arrangement. If you look at option two, you can see that I won't repeat everything. They're very similar, except the times are a little bit better if we have the attendance zone schools. And there is not the additional cost for transportation with the attendance zone schools. At least those are the rough estimates right now. Sarah and Nikki, do you have anything to add?
I think just to touch on, we were supposed to do load counts today, so that didn't happen. But we do think that we could ride the middle school and high school together if we did a opt-in for our high school students. So we would basically, if your grades 10 through 12, Nikki, correct me if I'm wrong, but grades 10 through 12 would have to opt in to ride the bus. Otherwise, we would not have them transported unless they're asking for it. Then we think our load counts would look right.
Mr. Bryant has a question?
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if Sarah, Nikki, you were on the meeting last Wednesday where we had a public comment period about grade configurations. And the emails we've been getting for the past 2 weeks have been kind of all slightly around, but at the end of the day, when we make a decision, not everybody's gonna be happy, no matter what. I get that. Option 2, the people that spoke seem to be the most favorable of the group, the small group that spoke at that Wednesday meeting. And the other option, the con, I see down there, number 6 or so, families close to Sunnyside, maybe bus to Burnside. Is that because of the population density, that part of town? Since you're doing K through 4 grade support centers, I just don't know if that's a con. That's why. And I don't know who put the con on there.
Yeah, and if I could jump in, Mr. Bryant, that's a comment that I added, just to be clear that, there's a density close to Sunnyside, so, a lot of walkers would go to Sunnyside, and there'd be some buses that would go to Sunnyside, but there may be families that are, pretty close to Sunnyside and drive right by the school on the way to Burnside. So, and that's how it works, so I put that down there just to make sure that community members don't make assumptions about where they're going to go to school.
And the other thing, and I haven't talked to every kid or every parent in the high school, but I have not heard many, if any, like the late start and the late finish of the day for the high school. I mean, if you're involved in working, we're just talking about flight path and internships. You're not getting out of school till 4 o'clock, maybe you get down early because of the hour. I think that's another issue that we're going to have to address. And I realize the preliminary costs are quite high for 1 tier, but it's something that I'm still interested in hearing and exploring about of a 1 tier versus a 2 tier, especially since we don't know what our enrollment's going to be next year based upon an outside factor coming into play. So that may change things how we look into it. So I just share those. And I know we're not deciding anything tonight, but I just want to throw it out there. My thought is 1 versus 2 tier, and we're starting the high school at a different time than they currently are, getting out way earlier than they currently are. So.
Jim, I just wanted to add a little thought on that 1 tier system right now and why there hasn't been a ton of exploration on it. We would have to renegotiate our contract, and I just want you guys to be aware of this. We'd have to renegotiate our contract with First Student to go to a 1 tier system. I strongly recommend not doing that. We are set right now in a very good contract, and I'm watching across the state. Anyone that's negotiating a contract in the busing industry right now is receiving a easy double-digit percentage increase. I mean, it's not, we're used to a standard 3.5% as your normal increase. They're easily 16 to 20% increases right now on any contract being negotiated. It's just because the busing industry is it's like everything. I'm kind of preaching that a little bit, but there's no bus drivers and the cost is high, and that's what's happening right now. So just keep that in mind. If we go to a 1 tier system, we have to renegotiate our contract, and that's going to, I don't even know where to put our per bus rate to give us a cost on that. I could get a good estimate on what it is going to be, and we could go from that, but I don't know. I just don't know what it will be.
I understand that inflation is high. It's the highest since it's been in 40 years. I remember those days. So I get that, but I still we should explore it and just not just say, because we think it's gonna be this, I get that. I mean, maybe even, Mr. Derrick's got to come out of retirement and start driving bus this year if they're short, you know. That's a possibility. So, anyway, thank you. I just want to share my thoughts with that.
You could do.
I could do, yeah, we could come out and be a pair. Terry, I see Terry's on the call,
Ms. Smith, next, and then you.
Yeah, my question is very similar to Mr. Ryan's first question, but a lot of the feedback we've been getting is, it seems to be that both from families and from staff, they're interested more in the K-4 model for both elementary schools. The concern is equity, and the concern is that our schools will be segregated in some way, not have similar populations in both schools. So my question is there a way to be intentional with our busing so that both schools can look similar in terms of the population of students that are there, can be representative of Red Wing? I'm not sure if that's possible, but I'm just wondering if that has been considered. I realize that we wouldn't want to pull kids from an elementary school where they already are, so we have those kids at Burnside and we have those kids at Sunnyside, but can we be intentional with where students are placed that are currently at Twin Bluff so that we can have two K-4 or K-5 schools that are equitable and representative of the population of Prairie.
Ms. Hool, do you want to answer that, or do you want me to try?
I'm sorry, were you talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry, I always call you Sarah, but I just called you Ms. Hool this time.
I gotcha. It threw me off there. You can go ahead. Honestly, that's part, the district can determine boundaries based on however you want to do it. Logistically, when we're talking transportation, we look at logistics and how students are laid out, and that's how we draw boundaries. But that's up to you guys on how boundaries look.
And if I could add, there are some school districts that will have year-long processes to determine attendance zones because they may have multiple high schools, multiple elementaries. It's a very thorough process. And we draw the attendance zones based on information that we glean from CISO, because they have the maps, they can show, where the kids would be going to which school. It's logistically, we need to follow areas to make it the most efficient process, but we can certainly explore some possible areas to transport to different schools. It's an easy thing to say, but it would be very challenging.
I'm just thinking, going back to Wednesday, one of Anna's last comments was, we may not be able to do, have a solution for everyone, but maybe there's some things we can put into place that can help provide what we're looking for, because overwhelmingly it feels like the K-4 option is on the top of the list for a lot of people because of the community that's created there and fewer transitions for kids. But obviously the biggest concern is this equity issue. So I'm just wondering if there's something we can do to help change that. So it's not like that. We only have two schools to choose from, and so just looking at it from a different perspective, is there something else we can do?
If I could jump in, I know there are several other questions, but Ms. Hool, would you, at some point when we've really narrowed this down, would you be able to draw potential attendance zones so that we can at least see some of the demographics behind who's going to which school? Is that within your realm of ability?
Yeah, and so usually a district would use like a service like Guide K-12 as a company that usually helps districts determine demographics and things like you're asking for, Jennifer. That's not us, but we look at things just based on physical addresses, logistics, but we could, we can look at like our free and reduced numbers. Those we can attach stuff like that to students while that's something that we can see, but we don't have a whole lot of other things but logistics that we're looking at when drawing boundaries for transportation. If there's a group or someone we can work with to help us make those attendance zones what you're looking for, we would need guidance on it. We strictly look at addresses and student numbers.
Thank you. Mr. Deere?
Thank you. I'm going to ramble on a little here and just put some thoughts out here. Last year, I was very staunch in not wanting our high school to be run early, looking at the numbers and such for, I guess, US-wide or whatever, that our students learn better with later start time. I'm not convinced that applies directly, so I am open to discussing that. Secondly, it's obvious, I think we're all in support of the middle school concept, so I'm not going to debate that, but what I heard from people speaking and other people in the community is if there's a way to make our middle school 6, 7, 8, that would be optimal versus 5 through 7. So I'm going to ask that we look at every possible way to try to make that happen. I really believe we know we made the kids fit the building when we went to the 5 through 7 because it just doesn't work with our buildings the way it is. And I get it, but is there a way to do it? I put out an idea. I talked with Carson about a little bit about the concept of maybe having 2 to 4 sections of 5th grade at Twin Bluff into a 6th, 7th, and 8th Twin Bluff, which maybe would get us to the numbers in our elementary so that we can get that way. And hearing from, there's an area where we could maybe keep those classes off separate from the rest of the middle school. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I hope we take a good, strong look at it. The K4, K5 versus grade level centers. I personally have a preference to K4, but there's merits in both of them, and I'm open to either one, and I will support either one. So to me, there's more focus should be put to trying to get the middle school to be at 5 through 8 than the other stuff.
For some 5th graders and then 6th graders.
Right, but if you have a 5 through 8 middle school and then try to find a way to make this other, well, the options I saw before was a K through 8 at Twin Bluff. When we looked at that for an option of how we could make a middle school, but I can't put kindergartners there. I couldn't, so that's why I didn't think about it. So I'm open to a lot of different things. I'm open to flip-flop time and busing. I'm open to grade level versus it's not a neighborhood school, but whatever. You can call it what you want. But please, let's try everything we can to get to that 6th, 7th, and 8th middle school. I have not heard anybody say they would rather have a 5 through 7. I have not heard anybody say that. Maybe they're out there, but it's 6, 8 is what the feeling is. So we need to take a strong look at it. Thank you for letting me ramble.
You didn't ramble too bad.
No, I thought it was pretty good.
So Terry, I saw that you had your hand raised, but it's not anymore. Do you still have a question, or are we?
What it would be is just a kind of an explanation on what would happen with a single tier system. In the demographics that are going on right now in the employment world, the previous time that they went from a 2-tier system to a single tier system, the bus company lost 20% of the drivers. They don't make as much money when it's on a single tier system. And between a 20% loss, a potential loss of drivers, plus the increase of drivers would almost make it impossible for me to actually fulfill all the routes. And I'm telling you, single tier, I'd love to do it. be more, you know, we'd make more money. That's what I'm in the business for. But I'm just going to be realistic. You know, logistically for me, it would probably be a nightmare. But, you know, I'm willing to do anything. But I wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of that too, if we did happen to go to a single tier system.
If I could respond to Mr. Johnson, I agree with you, and that's why we've been kind of focused on the two-tier system. But I think Ms. Huel, you know, can at least come up with an estimate, just so that we've kind of done our due diligence in terms of how many extra routes. So we already have that, but then add, you know, potential extra costs for a one-tier system. So at least we can do that before the next meeting and be a rough estimate, but we'll at least lay it out in front of everyone.
Yeah, I can do that. Jim, you were asking for that. So I'm just going to take what the standard is that I'm seeing, what increases we're seeing and what that would look like for us. And we can just go off that number. We know how many, obviously we know how that system works. So it's getting what that number would look like per bus per day. So I can definitely do that. And just to kind of go off Arlen's few topics you had there, for us, the time, if we run a two-tier system for transportation, it doesn't matter to us who goes first or second, you know. So if we put the high school first in the elementary second or whatnot, that doesn't affect us. We don't care who goes first or second. That's up to you guys. And then that K through 5 and then 6, 7, 8 middle, that's something we can transport to. You know, I think Karsten, that was one of the first things I sent to you was a K through 5, but we can't house that, is what I've been told, right?
Yeah, one of the options, it was interesting because Mr. Dierks came up with an idea. I was thinking the same thing, and then a principal approached me about a very similar idea. We could, and I don't think this would affect transportation in a bad way. Theoretically, we could have, let's say, up to 4 fifth grade classes at Twin Bluff, and then another 4 over at Burnside, you know, or something like that. I think that would fit in Twin Bluff and would still fit in Burnside, maybe if we move some second graders back to Sunnyside. So I think there's a way to do it. It'd be a little complicated, but we could fit it in that way. The biggest negative that I see is that this year's 7th graders, you know, would then, you know, they were in the middle or in elementary school last year. They came to 7th graders this year. If you want to do a 6th, bump back to Twin Bluff and then come back to the high school. I think that would be one of the negatives anyway. But if the board is interested in the admin team really analyzing that option, you know, we can certainly do that.
We will have some issues with transportation with something like that if we're housing, unless those.
Yeah, I think the 5th graders going to Twin Bluff would just get on the same bus as the 6th through 8th graders.
But yeah, they'd run the same times, right? As the Twin Bluff. Okay.
Right.
That doesn't affect transportation then. So.
Yeah.
Yes. Ms. Tower?
Thank you. So right away when I saw that, I had the concerns about the start times as well. Elementary starting earlier than the high school. And I know why we did it last year. I know why we made the decision we made last year, because it was a cluster, right? When school was supposed to start, wait a minute, we have a little bit more time to peel that back. The research says high school kids should go later, period. Little kids should go earlier. But logistically, it doesn't make sense for a high school person's life to start school unless we shorten the school day. I don't see that happening in any way. So I really would like to look at that again in terms of having the high school start earlier now that we have a little bit of time to peel it back versus the high school starting at 8:50, almost 9 o'clock. But I could be in the minority. You know, the rest of the board may say, no, we like it because research says kids need to sleep later. But that goes into my question of, or my statement around attendance zone schools and grade level centers. If we were to have an open forum for families right now to tell us what start times they'd like, we would have people all over the map, and we would have high school families telling us without hesitation, most of them would want an earlier start time. Or they would say, so we could ask the public and the community all kinds of things, right? We could say, what do you think is the best for lunches for elementary kids? We could have a public forum, and they could come out and say, we want this, this, and this. My point is, we have to make a decision that's best for the community, not a certain group of people that have access to email that can send us a letter. Not a certain amount of people that have access to telephones that can call us because they can find our number on the website. We have to be equitable across the board. So Jennifer, I think you asked a very hard question, and I think it needed to be asked so the public could hear. You can't pinpoint people into an attendance zone and call it equity. I even see it as discrimination on some level. If I'm across the street from you, but my income from my home is just a little bit less, the line goes down the middle because now I have to be a Burnside kid because I have to even out the demographics. The same could be said for somebody who's, you know, in a more wealthier neighborhood. So to me, that I had a visceral response to, well, can't we just portion out the community to make sure that we have an equal distribution? That didn't feel good. And that's, you know, I'm not gonna base my decisions on what feels good, but I'm gonna base my decision on what's equitable and what's fair and what the community deserves versus what some groups want. And I think that's our job as a public school board, representing all families. And I get it. I mean, my brothers and I all went to St. Joe's, right? We'd all go together. They watched me on the playground. They picked on me. Then they went to I mean, I get that familial context. I get that. But there were a lot of things about that school also that didn't go so well. You knew that first grader that was just so difficult all the way through the system. And at this opportunity, you have multiple classes in one school that you can balance classes out for people. So I don't need to come at you like in a real aggressive way, because I think you did ask a question that was important. But I did have a response that hurt my heart. If we were to say, oh, you get to go to this school and you get to go to this school because your economics has to balance that school. That feels icky. It doesn't feel right. So that's my response on this.
So I have a couple of questions with the transportation. So is what's laid out here for Ms. Poole and, sorry, Nikki, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. So is what we have here in our option 1 and our option 2 as close as you could get those two tiers? Because I think that is one of the biggest problems with the start times is, I think it's a little more negligible who goes first, who goes second, when they're closer together. But when it's an hour, more than an hour apart between the start time of one school and the start time of the next, regardless of which one goes first or second, that's where it's really, really hard on families who have kids who are split between those two age groupings. So is this as close as it would get in the two-tier system?
Yeah, so we're running a 2-tier this year. We run 60 minutes. You have to be able to pick up your students, drop them off at school, and get back out to all the other students for your second tier. You need 60 minutes to do that at minimum.
So these school times don't have Twin Bluff going on the same tier as the high school. So it could get maybe 10 minutes closer if we do it that way. But from the time that the first tier drops their last kid to the second tier, we do need an hour.
Yeah.
Is there any type of hybrid system where you could have buses do multiple routes within town, and those buses that are coming from the further outlying areas in would be essentially one tier, but to have like, I mean, I know that that makes drop-off times, like that's a much longer window, and we'd have to figure out a plan for what we're doing with those kids who are dropped off at school, you know, at different times. But is there, it's really, really frustrating to me that we have to make decisions dictated by our transportation rather than by what is necessarily good for our kids and what our families have told us is best for them. So I'm really looking for literally any other option other than this. Because this wide of a range between the oldest kids and the youngest kids, we've been told over and over, doesn't work. And we've got teachers who have kids in schools that aren't at their same time. This doesn't work. There has to be something else. You're the expert, so I would really like to see something other than this from you. Is there anything?
Well, so you have a big ask there. I mean, what do you want for your students? So if you want us to use buses to drop students multiple times within 60 minutes, there is one kiddo or 60 kiddos that are going to get to school an hour earlier, and then we're going to go back out. So somebody is going to lose in that situation. So unless you're running a one-tier system, it's not going to be fair. So I don't understand how we're going to determine that. If you live, closer to school, you get 30 more minutes of sleep because, and that's the tough part. Honestly, it works out that way. So if you live on the outside of town, you unfortunately are riding the bus for 60 minutes. As we bring buses in, you have the shorter ride time. So it's hard to, we can use buses, within 60 minutes we can load up a whole bus in certain areas of town, but those kiddos are going to get to school earlier and just sit there. And then we have to watch them at school, that's added things at school too. So it's all in, a two-tier system in a rural district. Like we are logistically, we are a rural district. We have a lot of miles to cover with our buses. 60 minutes is really actually pretty great. I was terrified of that this year when we started it. I think you guys all heard me say, I don't know if we can do a turnaround in 60 minutes. But we are able to, that's 60 minutes from dropping off our students at school to picking up, to dropping off the next tier. So we are doing loading and unloading, all those things happen within 60 minutes. And so it's not horrible, especially where we're located. So I hear what you're saying, but I don't know how to do it faster with a two-tier system. And somebody is going to lose out. And that's our kids are someone's going to get to school always earlier than someone else.
I'm just wondering if there's any other type of hybrid type of thing or transit hubs or some other way to accommodate the fact that we don't have enough drivers and we may not have enough drivers for one tier, and the fact that our community overwhelmingly tells us they want schools to start closer together.
No, would be my short answer. There's not an easier way to do that.
A one-tier system
Yep.
would solve it, the question, there's a trade-off
Right.
there. But
Right.
Mr. Ryan,
Yes. Mr. Bryan, go ahead.
No, you're fine. Are you done?
I have other things that aren't related to transportation about these, but grade levels.
It's grade level and transportation. I'm glad Mr. Derrick brought that up because I meant to bring it up a little bit, but I was too long-winded. So I agree with the 6 through 8. When middle school opened, it was 7 through 9, and I was a 9th grader, so it's been that long. Back when I was a 6th grader in Red Wing, a few years ago, there was too many kindergartners who came in that at Burnside, a bunch of us, 3/4 of us went to Jefferson. got bused to Jefferson for our 6th grade year. As a 6th grader, I didn't like it because I was tied to my school, Burnside. But I understood it. I understood why. But I still went with some of my friends and all that. It made its purpose. And next year went to the high school and then out to the middle school. So I bounced around in 5-6 years, 4 different schools. So it does happen, and I never moved. I still have 132 Motel Ave. And so I like the idea of maybe some 5th graders in that Sunnyside area going to the middle school with their friends. And the 5th graders of Burnside staying there. And I think the line should be drawn by population or density, not by any other ways of how you want to do it. Population, if there's 400 kids over here and 500 over here, 100, the closest 100 goes to that school, no matter what you are. So I like that idea. I liked it, and I think that would probably help get back to that 6 through 8, because you're right, 8 through 12 is not a system that any other schools or many other schools have in the state of Minnesota. So a lot of things are on the table, a lot of things to be looked at. So.
Hey, Jim, I just had one thought about the 5th graders as you guys are talking about it. If you did Burnside and Twin Bluff and had Twin Bluff on the tier with the high school, you would have 5th graders going at 2 different times if you did 2 tiers. So something to think about with the schools.
And that would happen just because of making that 8, 6 through 8. If we needed to, we don't even know if we may have enough room at Burnside, Sunnyside to K through 5. We don't know till we do the whatever that, you just said it earlier in the thing, load limits or load count. And I like the idea that you said 10 through 12 have to opt in, because the parking lot's got a number of vehicles here or being dropped off. So then you're realistically only looking at some 10th graders and most of the 9th graders coming out or to the high school.
Yeah, an opt-in is super common actually for 10, 11, and 12th graders. It's, that once they hit the driving age is when we start seeing it. A lot of districts do it, and we could easily start that for those grades.
A lot of work to do, and so a lot of ideas, good ideas, I think, kicked around tonight. This is what the workshop, there's a whole, however you want to call it, bouncing things off. And then Terry, one last comment about Terry, if he's still on the line. Terry's absolutely right. If he's not making money, he's not providing a service for us. So he's a business. He's there to make money, and I understand that fully. So
I'm still here. So
just we're on the same page. So as far as we'll get an estimate for renegotiating contract for 1-tier system. I don't think that'll take too long. I'm getting a feeling that we should maybe have a third option as far as a 6-8 middle school with some 5th grade classes.
if needed.
Or some other way to do it.
Yeah, okay, so we can do that, relatively easily. Is there kind of, and without a commitment right now, but is there kind of a consensus that if we have a 2-tier system, that we would want high school kids to go first or not?
I could be a standalone on that. I just know what kids are up against when they have to leave school at 4 o'clock. There's a lot of income issues.
And work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard many comments about, if you have involved in anything, speech or different things, different activities, working, you're not getting out of it until 4:30.
And it sounds like, we aren't taking a vote now, but it sounds like Arlen.
I'm open to it.
You're open?
I'm not saying I'm overruled, I'm open to it.
Yeah.
Very much.
Okay.
I'm open, I just really want to see them closer together. As unrealistic as it may be, I feel like no matter which one we say goes first, a whole lot of people are going to be upset. Because, so if we can somehow negate that, if we can somehow get them closer together, that would solve a lot of the problems. Then I don't think it's as big of a deal.
But that would be true either way if we have a two-tier system. And the only reason I'm asking, it's not a commitment, it's not a promise from board members, but it would be really helpful for the transportation team to kind of zero in on one way or the other with that. We can always change it if we decide not to do that, but that, otherwise we have 2 options times 2 options times 2 options, and it becomes unfair. So I think what we'll do is maybe the next round, we'll assume both options 1 and 2 are 2-tier system with high school kids going first, just to see how that will look like. And then we'll throw in the middle school kids with the high school kids in the transportation route, just to see what it looks like with timing. And again, we can reverse that. It's not the end. And then, let's see. And then we'll still have, of course, the 2 options here plus the 6-8 middle school option. Okay.
So one thing that I didn't mention before is that, so I've gone back and forth in my head about whether I like the grade level centers or the attendance zones. And the one thing that regardless of what people have wanted, what seems to me to have run clear through that is that they want consistency. So the people who wanted to have the attendance zone with the idea of the neighborhood school is that it's the consistency. That if I live closest to Sunnyside, that I know that my kid is going to Sunnyside from kindergarten through 4th grade. And I think that realistically, having only 2 elementary schools, that is not true. That I could live right next to Sunnyside and in August find out that my 4th grader is going across town. I personally don't find that consistent.
I don't think that would be, I can't see that happening.
But if we had a whole bunch of, if we needed to add sections of 2nd grade and 3rd grade, 4th grade, somebody's got to go.
Who lives that close, you should be going to that school.
But then if a kid who lives out on 58, they're going to get bused all the way to Burnside. It makes more sense that a kid who's in the center of town would go to Burnside and the kid on 58 goes to Sunnyside. It's a hot mess. So I think that although it has the idea of consistency, I don't think in reality that it would be consistent. I think, and I live on the far east end of town. When my kids were at Burnside, it was a pain in the butt to have them all the way out there. But I knew that when my kids were in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade, they're going to Burnside. I could plan for it. I knew that years in advance. It wasn't the middle of August finding out that my kid is going to be going to school across town. And there are a lot of people who I think are going to be in that we don't really know area, some sibling, and then what we've seen this year, at the beginning of this year, with the trying to balance out the class numbers and trying to keep family groups together, that if you have, let's say, too many 4th graders and you need to break some 4th graders off to another school, now the 2nd grade and kindergarten siblings of that 4th grader get shuffled around. It ends up being much more complicated and much more inconsistent in the long run. I think when we think about attendance zones, I think the warm, fuzzy idea that we have is that they are neighborhood schools. My kids and all the kids that they play with and that they live next to, they all walk together to this school. And that is not what's happening when we have 2 schools, 2 elementary schools. When we talked about neighborhood schools before, we're looking at having 4 or 5 elementary schools. That's not what we have now. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's something that we need to keep in mind, that we're looking at the reality of our current situation, not what neighborhood schools were like 20 years ago, when the demographics were different, the number of schools were different, and the layout was different. Another thing that I keep coming back to with that consistency idea is our most vulnerable kids who are in transitional housing situations, who don't have consistent housing. It's one thing if you live in the same house for your entire childhood growing up. But we have a whole lot of kids who go to our schools who are unhoused, who are bouncing from one house to another, who are in rental situations where they might move multiple times within a school year, even if they're not unhoused, just the house that they're in may change. For those kids, the biggest consistency that they have is having that same teacher and having the same school. And that falls apart if they move from one attendance zone to another attendance zone. So that kid now has to switch schools in addition to switching homes, or they don't have transportation. And those families who are in that economic bracket, who are the most impacted by that type of thing, are also the most dependent on some form of public transportation. So I feel like from an equity standpoint and a consistency standpoint, I'm really leaning towards the grade level centers because I think ultimately it is more consistent. I totally agree that having that school culture of having, you know, if you can have the same kindergarten through fifth graders together for 6 years, that's wonderful, and you can have family groupings together, but I don't think that that's our reality, and I think that it's missing out. It's the most negatively impacting the kids who are already at the greatest disadvantage. So that's where I'm at currently with it. I can see pros and cons to all of them, but I feel like those are really important things to kind of keep in mind. So
You bring up a good point. We have, 2,500 kids to concern ourselves with here. And, we have, some people have their lives changed because of, they have to move. We can't, we do what we can to help them, but we can't stop what we're trying to do just because some kids might move. And, but then you got people that move out from different school districts too, go to different school districts too, move to different areas. So they have to start all over too. I understand you, I'm not here to argue with you.
I think you're right, both of you. But when we look at the data of our students that are struggling the most in high school, the data correlates to kids that struggled the most in elementary school. And two of the factors were transportation and housing. I mean, so if we say we're going to help kids and we really want to help and we really want to do the deep work, then we've got to commit to the deep work from the baseline on. We don't say, oh yeah, well, we know that that doesn't help, but we can't negatively impact. We're not a private school. We're a public school.
did you have more? Okay, Mr. Pierce.
Just a comment though, what made me reflect a lot of the grade level center versus attendance zones, and once again, I want to reiterate that the 6th to 8th to me is more important than almost anything. And what we had last meeting was that we may need to have 1 or 2 additional classrooms per grade to do attendance zone schooling because we can't get the numbers to equal out, whereas if we go with grade level center, we're going to be able to make a consistent number within 1 or 2 students throughout the whole and possibly have the need for less classrooms. So to me, we get much closer to making that 6 through 8 a strong possibility that we can do it. So that's what got me looking at it. And I think we need to factor that in when we look at it. Maybe that's not a priority the rest of the board. To me, more than anything else, I think for discipline issues, just everything that 6 to 8 means more to me than just about anything else. So
I suggest we move on because we're going to debate this 2 weeks from now anyway, again.
All right, we've all had a chance to weigh in. So we're on to our policy review.
Thank you, Sarah and Nikki.
Bye, guys.
Good night.
So there are a number of policies that need to be reviewed every year. And those are the ones that we were tasked to look at this go around. So 214 is out-of-state travel by school board members. Pretty brief and basic. Does anybody have anything they want to address with that? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. So the next one that we review annually is 413, which is harassment and violence. And we did make changes, not changes to the policy, but changes to the reporting procedures last year. Does anybody have anything they want to bring up with that? Okay, if not, the next one is 414, which is mandated reporting. This is basic requirements by statute. Does anyone have anything they want to bring up with this? Okay. If not, then we're moving on to 506, which is, let me get to it, too many tabs open. Student discipline. Anybody have any?
I have, I like the policy. I just want to reiterate to the community that we have to follow it. There's a lot of things that are happening, and we're putting this policy into place for a reason. And we're hearing about what's happening. I'm not saying this student should get X consequence or this student should get this consequence. All I'm saying is we really need to follow our student discipline policy to the T as much as we can so that we can ensure safety and learning. And I don't know if our administrators know that, you know, if the board has their back when they do have to make the tough decisions about student discipline. But this policy is in place for a purpose. And I think it's paramount that the administrative team, you know, knows that we support what they have to do regardless of, because it's hard. It's very hard to send a student home for X, you know, but we have to follow it.
And we would appreciate those comments because it's really important to support one another with those tough decisions. So thank you.
I think I like the way Holly brought that up, Ms. Holly.
Thank you.
Especially since we had 2 emails recently from some stuff that happened in the classrooms, and then a nice email from, Frank's last name is Norton? Mr. Norton, on how he's addressing it. And so maybe down the road, next meeting, we can get a little follow-up as to if anything's happened from that, because I think it's important that people take the time to notify us on something that's, in some cases, very, I term some serious actions that need to be addressed and how addressed. And not that, but these 2 people took the time to produce lengthy questions and comments and issues and concerns to us. And so I appreciate Mr. Norton's having the bull by the horn, so to speak, and diving right in and getting it done right. I like his approach.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm planning to include kind of the planning or sort of the work that's being done at the high school to address some of the issues in the administrative reports for every board meeting.
Oh,
I don't think it's included tonight, but if you're okay with that, and I'll just list things, and if people have questions at the meeting, then you can ask, and if not, you know, we'll just go on from there.
Yep, great. Okay, next up is 514, which is bullying. Anyone have anything they want to bring up with that? If not, I believe 522 is student sex non-discrimination. Again, this is pretty much based off of state statute. Any issues? Okay, and then 524 is acceptable use for electronic information resources. And I know this is constantly, the policy I think does not change, but you know, the ramifications of the different technology we have constantly changes its implications, but any issues with that? Okay, next is 806.
Crisis management.
Yes, crisis management policy.
Is this in reference to crisis management around big issues, tornadoes, or small issues, lockdowns?
Well, they're all big issues.
It's all in there.
So I'd like an update in the future on how the work of the safety coordinator is doing at the high school and where we're at with district trainings from that position, which is what we were told was gonna happen at our next meeting, but yes, we need a crisis plan, and yes, we need to enforce it. And follow it.
Next is 1000, I believe, which is our inclusive education plan.
If I could just add that every school, or almost every school, has the previous policies, that are reviewed. They're based on the School Board Association. Policy 1000 is something that we came up with that mirrors a state law. So most school districts don't have a policy with regard to this, but I took that information from state law and just put it into the form of a policy. And then I think we decided, that we would just include it on a yearly review list. Otherwise, it's reviewed every 6 years, and then, I think it's important to look at this. This is sort of the framework we should be following all the time.
The basis of what we do.
Okay, if nobody has any issues with policies, then we are on to other topics. If anyone has anything, I don't think I have anything specific that's been given to me in advance for any of the other areas, but
I'm going to bring it up here at the workshop. I'm treasurer. Am I supposed to do anything on that? Am I supposed to sign anything? Nobody's had me sign anything. I'm assuming we issue some checks, and does the treasurer's name go on the checks we do or not?
Jackie's still on, or Ms. Paris is on the call, so maybe she can explain what's normally done or the expectations of a treasurer.
Nobody's told me to do anything.
I was under the impression Holly was still the treasurer.
You?
No, I lost that. I voted against myself.
So if the check's going out with Holly's name on it, they're no good.
Well, we're still in the process of working with the bank to even get signature cards ready. So I will let you know when they're ready.
Treasurer.
Thank you.
and then at our next workshop, we'll have a finance focus because we'll be looking at January's financials. Yes.
I wanted to bring up the, I want more information about the educational planning process or what's actually the point of it. I keep hearing we've got this $50,000 and we're going to hire an educational planner, but I don't know what for. And I don't know how that is going to work with our current plans of what we have to get done today or where we're headed with it and who is applying to be the educational planner and what their background is. You know, are they applying to be our educational planner and they don't have any experience in small rural towns in Minnesota? You know, I want a lot more information about that. And I love the idea that people are, you know, people from the community want to support Redmond Public Schools and donate money to certain situations, but I also like to know what the big picture is.
You want to talk about it now, or do you want to?
No, I'm talking about for like a future topic.
Sure.
Yeah, at the next workshop, yeah.
Yeah, that's in, yeah.
Yeah, I don't need you to bring anything, but I want a lot more information about it because referendum, there's so much going on.
Yep.
And I keep hearing about that nugget. I don't know how that nugget is gonna impact.
Sure.
And we can add that to the next workshop.
Yep.
Great.
Okay. If there is nothing else,
Motion to adjourn. How's that?
Second.
all right, so we have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Bryant, second by Ms. Tower. All those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. All right, motion carried. We are adjourned at 6:37, and our meeting will begin, our regular meeting will begin after a 5-minute recess. I suppose we should have done that before officially adjourning, but here we are. So that puts us at 6:42.
It's right. No, go back to your, go back.
regular school board meeting to order. First up, we have our roll call. We have Mr. Bryant, Mr. Dierks, Ms. Tower, Ms. Tift, and I, Ms. Austin-North, along with Superintendent Anderson here. Ms. Buck and Ms. Rowe are not able to join us tonight. We did our Pledge of Allegiance during the workshop, and Mr. Bryant is going to read our mission statement.
Thank you. The mission of the Reading Public Schools is to educate and inspire all students as they realize their full potential and become respectful, responsible, and productive citizens.
Thank you. All right, next up is the approval of our agenda. Does anybody have anything they would like to add or amend to tonight's agenda? If not, I am looking for a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Bryant, second by Ms. Tower to approve tonight's agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And that motion carries. All right. One page too far. Next up, we have our educational plan. So if you are looking through the packet, we'll draw your attention to that, which of course is the basis of the work that we do. Next up is recognitions and upcoming events. Does anybody have any recognitions or upcoming events they would like to share?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Congratulations to Diesel Buck on his 1,000 points for Red Wing High School basketball program. I think he's been a starter since maybe his 8th grade year. For sure, joined varsity, I think his 8th grade year. So yeah, way to go, Diesel. I think that's the family of 4 that have all gotten 1,000 points for Red Wing Public Schools. Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
I'd like to add 2, after the board meeting, our last board meeting, I walked down through the high school and walked through the cafeteria. There was this great dance, put on through community education for adults with special needs, and they had just a great time, you could tell. Maddie is the one who organized it through community ed. I can't remember Maddie's last name, but it was just very well done. And then in the auditorium up the hall, there was a Red Wing High School talent show. And I'm not even sure who to thank for the work that was put on, if it was students or if there was a faculty advisor. I'm not sure about that. But you had a whole bunch of kids who, first, they're talented, and even more important, they were just having a great time. In person, performing for one another, along with the audience. So that was a special night after the board meeting.
That was the Performing Arts Club, and Sarah Shannon and Julie Martin, the staff that helped with that. It was amazing.
And I did go to the dance too, and danced and had a cookie. And some of my classmates from kindergarten were at the dance. And so they're so, I mean, adults, they're great.
I'll just add, we're getting that time of the year, that particular seasons are ending for some of our student athletes. The hockey game tonight was postponed because of the weather. They played tomorrow night. So the last home game for them. Basketball is starting to come to an end. Getting ready for the spring concerts and band and choir and all that coming up. So people listening out there, get out and enjoy it. I mean, these students are working hard to do whatever they're participating in to excel in what they do. It's not only the activity they're doing, it's the camaraderie that they're making, their friendships, their memories they're making with people that they are going to school with and participating in, no matter whatever it is. So get out and enjoy it. I'm going to go to the hockey game tomorrow night because I have a nephew playing. He's a senior, and I'm a little biased there, but I plan on doing what I can to go participate in the other activities that are going to go on between now and the spring, the summer. Winter has been too doggone long for me. I'm ready to get up and out and get going. So, thank you.
And one other thing I'll add, just, I think, probably take for granted our staff that does, our custodial staff that does a great job shoveling and clearing all the snow. It's a little bit more apparent today because of the abundance of it. But just want to thank them, especially on a day that there wasn't in-person school, for them to get things ready for us to be here tonight. So I appreciate that. Okay, next up is our public comment. And we did have a person here for public comment, but I don't see them any longer. Do you have any email public comments?
I do not.
Okay, and I don't have any either. So, just a reminder for anybody who's watching, you are welcome to come to the board meetings regardless of whether or not you comment. And if you would like to comment, we just have you sign in when you come. And then you have 3 minutes, which you're able to address the board. You're also able to email in public comment. If you specify that you would like it read during the meeting, we will facilitate that. Otherwise, we, as always, are appreciative of other emails and phone calls, concerns, and updates. Okay, we are on to COVID-related topics. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Anderson.
As we've done for many months, there's background information sheets about COVID-related topics. And Shonda Jorgensen is here to highlight some of the suggested changes the COVID response team has for the learning plan, and also a bit of good news about recommendations for changing the masking policy. It's just a matter of not if, but when. And so, Ms. Jorgensen, if you could jump on and explain some of those changes.
Sure. So first off, what we want to do is starting on February 28th, we want to not quarantine any more students, regardless of home contact or school contact. We saw success in the quarantine of home contacts, but our cases are falling so drastically that we don't see a need for it. Plus, we have, at the moment, we have the mask mandate, and everyone 5 and over has the ability to be vaccinated. We started the school year off not quarantining high school students because they were able to be vaccinated. And now that the younger ones are, we're thinking it's about time to quit quarantining. And we want to start that on February 28th. The other thing, of course, the big thing that we're going to talk about is the masking. Originally, the COVID team would like to see the masks stay in place until 2 weeks after spring break, because that's our last big break where everyone kind of can go out and do their own thing. If we have masks for 2 more weeks after that, we will be able to kind of let COVID burn out, and then we would hopefully be as safe as we can in the school. We also realize that a lot of people are ready to get rid of them. And what we'd like to see is at least give us 2 more weeks to see how this quarantine, no quarantining works out. Right now we had 11 cases of COVID last week. Our highest week was 86 at the end of January. So we are falling quite rapidly. And if we don't see a huge spike in our cases, then we'd feel comfortable voting to get rid of the mask mandate on the March 7th school board meeting. That's about it.
Mr. Bryant?
Thank you. Chandra hit the nail on the head about the masking. Appreciate everything the COVID team's done. I don't agree with her 2 weeks after the spring break, so I'm glad they modified it, a recommendation sooner than what originally thought. But it's been 23 months since this pandemic has hit. Changed our lives drastically. To where we're wearing these things now. When it first came out, nobody got near each other. We closed schools. We did all that. But just the numbers came in. I get my phone every day. I get new numbers in Minnesota and all that. I think it's time to end the mask mandate. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you my reasons why. Hundreds of other schools have already went to optional or recommended masking. It's been nearly 2 years, like I said, since the pandemic started. COVID numbers are going down drastically, just as Sandra said. Big thing that I really I think about is we always are talking about helping staff and students with the mental health and wellness of them. It's time. Too much time and stress is going on to remind our students to keep their masks on. And vaccinations are increasing every day. The numbers are increasing. More and more people are getting vaccinated. I was in the school back after agenda meeting in November. I think Pam and I, our Ms. Rowe, walked around. And I bet we told a dozen kids to put their mask on. And we weren't even just a part of the building. And so this is back months ago. And I know we heard the stress that the teachers had about telling kids to put their masks on. Our largest employer in Goodhue County lifted their mask mandate for guests on 2/17 of 2022. Disney World doesn't even have a mask mandate anymore. I realized why March 7th was picked, because it's a school board day. Why wasn't March 1st? Why wasn't March 2nd? You know, we just picked the 7th because we want to do that. We want to end on that day. So, I can go on, but we've heard from a number of people. We're seeing the numbers going down. So at that time, I am going to make a motion that Redmond Public Schools end their mask mandate as of midnight tonight, and make it optional or recommended if people choose to do it.
Just so you know, the COVID team is always going to recommend that masks be worn in schools. It's one of the most effective mitigation strategies against COVID. Can't yet.
Hold on. Motion on the floor, Sandra. You don't interrupt.
Sorry.
We'll get to discussion in just a moment. So we have a motion made by Mr. Bryant to end the mask mandate effective midnight tonight.
I'll second.
2/22. There is more to it though is that all you want?
Mask mandate optional, and we're making it optional or recommended that they want.
Optional or recommended.
Same thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Optional / recommended.
Okay.
We're not going to discourage anybody from wearing a mask.
Optional /
I'll bully them if they do.
Okay, and seconded by Ms. Tower. Now we'll open it up
Thank
for
you.
discussion.
If I can just ask to clarify, if this is approved, then I think we should have a separate motion regarding the learning plan, because what's presented here is different, so we have this as presented, plus the end of the mask mandate, or just make it compliant with the motion that would be.
Work on one motion at a time.
Right.
Okay. Ms. Tower, you have your hand up?
Yes. Nice job. Thank you. I appreciate you kind of breaking it down like that, and with all the other places that have chosen to go without masks or having them optional. I had the opportunity to have a long conversation with Mr. Norton, the high school principal, last week. I called him to just kind of see how he's doing with this latest influx of behavior. And he said, I said, is there anything that, you would like in terms of support from the board, how we can, support what's going on in the school without us actually, stepping into the school and being there for you. And he said, one of the biggest things, and he said, it's not a political thing. It's a human thing. In the sense, he said, when the kids can't see my smile, or they cannot hear the tone of my voice matching my eyes, that I'm not mad. And when the first thing I have to say to the first 50 kids walking in the building is put your mask on, put your mask on, put your mask on, put your mask on, he said it really is impeding the climate. And I get that as a teacher in the classroom, and I get where he's coming from. And so he said, I would just like the board to take it into consideration that it is hampering student relationships with their teachers and with each other and with, what's going on in the cafeteria and just different things. He said, I'm not asking, for anybody to make any sudden moves, but I just want the board to know that it does impact our day-to-day interactions with each other. And like Jim said, it's been 23 months. And we have some kids who, been in school and this is all it is. I understand why we did it, why we're doing it. I fully get it. But I'm in support of what Jim is asking tonight. And that is not characteristic of me. I love the COVID team. I appreciate the hard work you have put in. I mean, we wouldn't be in this position if it hadn't been for you and your guidance. I'm just strained just a little bit. And that's just where I'm coming from based on being in the schools and talking to Mr. Norton and knowing what's going on in the schools. Your work has been stellar, appreciated. We have gone round the bend with a lot of situations, 2 different boards, where you have hung in there, Shonda, and put on a brave face for a lot of negative feedback. And it's not been easy. So I say this with a huge caveat that I appreciate and respect the amount of time you have put into this and the day, hours, and meetings and the phone calls home to families, like, you have to stay home, you get to come, you're not wearing a mask. I mean, with Dawn and with Joni, the amount of work that you have put in to keep Red Wing safe, I feel like Red Wing has done their due diligence. Hurrah us. We've worked our butts off to make sure that we are safe in this, in Grayson County. So that's all I have to say about that, but kind of go off. But thank you, Jim.
Yep, Mrs. Yerkes?
Thank you. If I can, I'd like to do it in a couple different ways. First, I would like to hear what our COVID team has to say on this. And then I have a question for that, and then I have what I want to say more after that. But
Okay.
Along with that, while you're talking, the COVID team, do you have any statistics on how our neighboring school districts have fared with COVID compared to us when they did not have mask mandates? Did they have better, more transmission percentages than us, or anything like that you could give us for information? So, thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Jorgensen.
Okay, sorry. So as far as Arlene of the statistics, I don't have specifics, but I do have experience in other districts that did not have masks. Their rates of COVID were a lot higher than what ours are. Now, the school districts I've worked with are a lot bigger than us. So, you got to kind of scale it back. But compared to us versus them, masks have really helped our situation. We've had a lot more COVID in the building this year, but that's because we're all in. Everyone's there every day. And just because of the Delta and the Omicron variant, we're very different from the COVID that we dealt with last year. So what, as the COVID team would like to say, we will always recommend masking. It's the easiest #1 mitigation strategy that you can do to keep yourself safe and to keep everyone else safe. So we're going to say we'll recommend it. I know Jim said optional recommend. We're always going to recommend it. And just know that when we go away from masking, that everyone is putting themselves at risk by coming to school. They are going to be exposed to COVID. We can no longer use if you were wearing a mask with someone and you're around someone with COVID, that you're not a close contact. And so that's just going to get a little muddy there. We just want everyone to be aware of that. We also want to point out that there are going to be people who are wearing masks. They might be immunocompromised. They might have a family member that is. They may just not want to get COVID. And so we need to be very conscious that we respect those people. Also with isolation, you are still required to wear a mask if you come back off short isolation. So if we have a staff member that comes back on day 6, you will see them wearing a mask. They will be required. And then that's something that we need to think about if we move to short isolate students. They will be required to wear a mask. And so are we going to get into a situation where the kids are going to go, oh, that kid's wearing a mask, they have COVID, we're going to make an issue of this. So that's something you just need to be aware of. So there are instances where we will see masks by choice or by requirement, but we're just not going to require it for the entire district. And that's it.
Thank you. Unless I hear some other information here during this discussion, I am in favor of removing the masks per motion, as far as I'm concerned, immediately. I did not get my question answered, what our surrounding districts are doing as far as Goodhue, Lake City, Zumbrota, Ellsworth. I can't believe they've been able to function without a mask, and we had to do it. I think I'm a very staunch and have been very staunch supporter of wearing masks, but I did a lot of observations, people in the grocery stores and everything else. The time has come that it's just time to do it. Some of the changes from when I was very supportive of masking is now all of our students have had the opportunity to vaccinate if they so desire. Our mask mandate is very difficult to enforce. Many of our people that wear masks do not wear it properly. We're spending all our time trying to worry about keeping the mask on our students. I think that time could be better spent trying to work with students that are causing issues in our district. As I said, it appears our surrounding school districts have been operating fine without a mask mandate. And it just really does not make any sense to me to be an island in the area, the only school district in the area with a mask mandate. So it's time. It really is time. And I hope I'm correct. If I'm not, come back to me quick. I will be the first one. If we have an issue, we notice a huge change to support putting them back on. After this is done, I'd like to have us go one step further, because I think this contact tracing that we've been doing may have helped us at its time, but I also question if it's even really legal to be inquiring people on their medical conditions. I was always questioning it at the time, but I think the bottom line is, if you're sick, stay home. Doesn't matter if you have COVID, the flu, a bad cough, the measles, the mumps, whatever it happens to be. If you're sick, stay home. If you come to school and you're sick, we're going to send you home. If you got COVID, you're going to get sent home. So the only thing that's in the variable in between is when you're not showing the symptoms and whether you're transmitting it. It's just time to do it. So I'm ready for voting to remove masks with Jim's motion. Thank you.
All right, so I just have a couple of questions. If you could just clarify again, Ms. Jorgensen, about, so if this motion passes, what does that mean for those shortened isolation and shortened quarantine times? As you're saying, they're still going to be required to wear a mask because that's a condition of being able to come back prior to that full 10, 14-day situation. What systems do we have, or what do we need to make sure that that happens, right? Like, if I'm teaching 7th grade language arts, how do I know, and legally and also, just logistically, if there's a student in my class who is only able to be there if under the condition that they wear a mask, how are we going to enforce that? How does that work? Like, can you just help walk through the ramifications of if when we remove masks, what all the other consequences kind of are?
Right. Well, right now we are only short isolating employees. So employees are only allowed to come back on day 6 and after. We're still doing the full 10-day isolation for students, mainly because there's a lot of social ramifications. Also, like you said, how is the language arts teacher going to know that the student in the corner has to wear a mask? That's where that gets a little muddy. So right now, it's not an issue because we aren't bringing students back early. It's just something, if we decide that we need to bring students back early, we need to really think about the logistics of how that's going to work and how we're going to manage that. And we may have people that decide, I don't even want to wear a mask, so I'm just going to stay out the full 10 days. It's their choice what they want to do. But if employees want to come back, they have to wear that mask. And so I'm not too worried about, making sure employees are wearing it correctly. It's when we decide to short isolate students that we need to really figure out a really good plan on how to make that work.
And how would this, or would it not change the current contact tracing or any of the other work that we're doing with kind of managing COVID?
Well, I mean, when we take the masks off, we no longer have the rule that we've been following. If you're masked and the person who has COVID is masked, you're not considered a close contact. If everyone is unmasked, then if you're within 6 feet of someone who has COVID for 15 minutes, you are considered a close contact. But since we're not quarantining, we're not doing any, we're going to stop doing that. We're just going to stop contact tracing. It's up to you guys. So what we're going to do in the elementaries, at least, is if there is a positive in the classroom, we'll email that class and say there was a positive of COVID in your classroom. The last day they were there was this day. Please watch for these symptoms in your student, and if they have these symptoms, keep them healthy. Is the basic. High school, they're in 8 different classes. We could pick out seating charts and say everyone that was sitting around them is considered a close contact, and we can let them know. But, are people reading those close contact notifications? Are they paying attention to them? That kind of thing. So at the moment, our contact tracing is very minimal because we have masking. And so once the masks come off, there's going to be a lot more notification going out, if we still want to keep doing the notifications.
Would it be possible at that high school level to do what you're talking about with the elementary, to just, if my kid is in 7 classes, any kid in any one of her 7 classes is positive, she gets an email that there was a positive in her class?
We could. The problem with that is they might get multiple emails a day.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Tower.
Yes, what was I going to say?
I don't know. That's a huge problem.
I think Arlen was ahead of me.
No, I did not take my.
Oh, you didn't take your hand up. Okay.
I'm trying to get it down now, but it's stuck. There we go.
Oh, it lost me because I was listening to what.
I'm ready, I'll go.
You go, and then I'll come back.
My next or somebody else next?
I don't see you in there at all, so.
Well, I raised my hand.
Oh, you use my computer.
There you go, I had my hand raised. May I?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Prairie.
Thank you. Now I lost my track. No, answering, I said this back in, whenever we put this discussion again about having it last fall, I think it's summer. The students, Mr. Norton's right. I mean, I brought up that fact back several months ago when Ms. Rowe and I were walking around. I'd come out of the school and they're all walking into the school without the mask on. They get to school, they put the mask on. They're getting in their car. They're going everywhere else. They're not wearing their masks. You've seen it. I mean, if somebody wants to wear the mask, I'm 100% in favor of them. If anybody picks on them, I'm 100% to take care of and discipline that person right away. It's coming to the fact that people are accepting it more. If they wish to wear a mask, I got 0 problem. Anybody else should have no problem with that. Area schools. The last my knowledge, there isn't any school in Goodhue County other than Redmond that has a mask mandate. Goodhue has not had a mask mandate this whole year. Like cities of Rhoda. So I don't know about Ellsworth, but in Wisconsin, it's a whole different world over there. So I just think it's time. I realize, people are concerned about it, but more and more people being vaccinated. They're just not wearing their mask anywhere else. And if we're really worried about the health and welfare and mental well-being of our staff and our students, this is one way we can show them that we're there for them by doing this. That's enough.
Thank you,
Ms. Towers, do you remember?
Yes, you gave me just enough time to come back with my thought. This brings me to a staff work plan. So who gets to be out if they're not sick working from home, and who has to go into the office? And I think that's what I have asked for in the past, was in the district office, or in, who gets to work from home and who has to go to work. Well, we know that, it's pretty clear. Teachers have to go to work because they're with the kids, but is that equitable for other people to say, oh, I'm just going to work from home today? No, It's not unless it's a personal day or a sick day. So I want to know if the COVID team has thought about having a district work plan or district protocols for people who, because it's been very loose. And it's been very loose all over the place. And I know that places are starting to come around now with more traditional types of situations. But I would like to encourage the COVID team and the administrative team to have that in an HR setting so that it doesn't become, why do they get to stay home and why do I have to go to work? And so-and-so told me I don't have to go to work, or so-and-so said I can have Fridays off, or so-and-so said, that's not fair, and it's taxpayer dollars. It's not, it's not, I don't want to go to work today because I'm taking advantage of the COVID situation. So I would like to see some type of COVID team, administrative team, HR plan in the future, shortly, versus waiting. And I know you want to respond, Karsten, but I do know that there's people that have been not coming to work and they work from home, or that doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah, I can answer, but I wanted Mr. Brent, your Andrews.
So I just think that's a separate issue than the mask thing. I think you're right, but I think that, maybe I'm wrong here, but the motion is for eliminating masks. I think you bring up a good point. I think that should be addressed at a different time, if I may.
I'm all good for that. I still want to lose my train of thought.
So if nobody else has anything, everybody else? Okay.
That's it.
No, I'm totally good with that.
I just want to say thank you for the conversation. I agree with much of what's being said. And also thank you, Shonda, for all the work that you've done with this. We just really appreciate you and your team. I just want to clarify with the motion that's on the table, that masks would be recommended. Is that part of the motion, or is that something that we would work on later in the learning plan?
Optional/recommended.
That's what the motion was.
Okay, so the word optional/recommended, that's the word.
That's other terminology I've seen on other boards that have passed this. So you want to recommend? Yeah.
That's the motion.
That's the motion, and
Okay.
it means the same thing to me.
Okay, to me, the word recommended is what I prefer. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Call the question.
yes. So we have a motion on the table by Mr. Bryant to end the mask mandate effective midnight of 2/22/22, to make masks optional/recommended, seconded by Ms. Tower. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And that carries. All right.
Thank you.
So,
This is done. I know you wanted to go and do something on the, learning plan to
Yes.
reflect this, but the other thing is, I don't know if it should be discussed tonight, if that mask mandate is off, how are we going to treat COVID tracing going forward? And is that something to discuss tonight, or should that come out of the team? 2 weeks, and then they're still going to do whatever?
It's part of the learning plan.
If they have it without a mask. I mean, the mask is part of the learning plan, but the other part of it, is that going to be altered also on when people get sent home?
Yeah, the close contacts and isolation and quarantine.
Where will that be treated? Now tonight, or would that be a recommendation coming back on that later?
Tonight.
Tonight.
We can take care of it.
Thank you. I'll go along with whatever works.
So if I could jump into the learning plan, and again, Ms. Jorgensen is here if there's some questions. First, I'll point out the different changes that the COVID response team had for the learning plan. You can see on the second page of it, the team recommends not quarantining any kids in grades E through 12, at least not requiring it. Parents could still, do that optionally, but it would not be required. The Other change is under isolation for staff members. On days 6 through 10, the requirement will be to wear an N95 or KN95 mask, so that's a change. And then there were some suggested changes under the face coverings, but I'll circle back on that. So those are the recommended changes. The big change was not quarantining kids in grades E through 12. So if I could answer your question, Mr. Dierks, right under that, there's close contacts, and the statement is when possible, parents will be notified if someone in the child's classroom tested positive, so symptoms can be monitored. I think it would probably be clearer if we said parents of elementary children. And so in my mind, I was thinking, well, maybe we should include that because we really don't want to be sending email messages out or letters to high school kids or in classes. But then I thought, we may have some athletes who should be notified if there's a positive case on a team. So that's the wording that we're using right now. It's just one possible parents will be notified. As we're going through the masking discussion, I kind of circled some areas that should change with the learning plan. So coming back to the first page where it says sending sick people home, right now, if someone's at school and they're demonstrating different symptoms of COVID, we do expect them to wear a face covering until they leave school grounds. So if they're in the nurse's office or the office and they're exhibiting symptoms, then we currently require masks to be worn. So you can decide if you want to keep that or not. Personally, I think we should keep that. It's a minimal thing. Then if you turn to the second page, under quarantining for E12, I think, if you could rely on us reworking that and just make it very clear that students will not be required to quarantine, but that parents may choose to quarantine their children. I think that that's kind of the gist of the conversation I think that we just had. And then lower on page 2 under quarantining, we would do the same thing. Staff who are in close contact, staff members do not need to quarantine. Just leave it short and simple. And then on page 3 under face coverings, I think we would eliminate those multiple paragraphs, and then we would say something like face coverings are optional / recommended, and just leave it really short and sweet. So again, that's just a real cursory review, but those are some of the things that I think we should just decide right now.
Could I just say out loud, we are not going to quarantine students, meaning you have to stay home if you are a close contact. We will still be isolating students. So if students are showing symptoms at school, they will get sent home. They will be required to test. If they test at home and they have COVID, they will require to have to stay home for 10 days. Just so so there's no confusion there.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. That's on the top part of the second page, so that wouldn't change at all.
Mr. Bryant?
A lot of stuff was thrown around on this learning plan conversation, and I think there's some good dialogue there, but I'm not sure I'm following everything that was brought up. I'm not sure I'm willing to make a motion on something I don't see that is in front of me. I think we get ourselves in trouble. I think we need to continue to follow the plan of somebody like Sean just said. If they get sick, if they show test for COVID, then they need to go home. Like Mr. Derry said, you're not feeling good. It's been the same adage, the same dialogue for years, for decades. If you're not feeling good, stay home. But so many times we go because we have a test to take. Got something going on today. I got work to do. So I'm more comfortable. If you want to call a special meeting to approve this sooner than later, I'd rather have it seen in front of me before I make a motion tonight.
With all the changes and the
Without
corrections.
changes.
But if I could counter that,
All you want.
with the learning plan, one of the really good changes I think that the COVID team was recommending is not to continue quarantining elementary kids. So, you know, I think that's something that we would all agree to. And so, you know, again, the verbal suggestion here is to change that part of the learning plan so that we're not quarantining elementary.
And that's fine, if it's written down here tonight, but you were adding extra verbiage and meanings and mentions. If you want to change that, I'm for that, not just because of our motion tonight, we should look at changing the math stuff on here, bring it back to us with the other changes.
But the learning plan implies that we have a face covering policy. We don't anymore.
We don't.
Tonight. So, you know, we have a conflicting information. We have a learning plan that says we require masks, but then we don't require masks. So all I'm asking for is just the ability to change the learning plan to reflect what we just decided.
And you want to do it right now?
Well, otherwise we have conflicting information. We have a learning plan that says they're required, but we don't require it.
Right,
So-
I'm just trying to clip, so if you do it right now, and then you show us that it's done, is that suffice? Or
If you tell us what you want to put in there, you kind of vaguely worked around it, looking at maybe putting this in here, thinking about that. Tell us exactly what you want to change out of it, word for word, and I'll be happy to vote on that tonight. But
Yeah, and again, I wasn't aware that the motion would be brought up to remove the face covering policy. Otherwise, I would have done it. I mean, I think it's a good decision, by the way, but that's why I don't have specific verbiage. But we can go through it right now if you want.
Sure. So the quarantining for E12 would be as written, but minus face covering policy.
Or do you mind if I go through
Sure.
page by page?
Yeah, let's just start at the top.
Yeah. So I don't recommend any changes on the first page.
no changes, okay.
Okay.
And again, just a reminder that that means that if someone is sick in school, they have symptoms of COVID, they just be required to wear the face mask until they leave the building.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
yeah, I think that's, you know, a reasonable thing. Second page, under quarantine for E12, the red part is the new information. So that was proposed. And so I would recommend, under quarantine for E12, students who are in close contact, students will not be required to quarantine, but parents may choose to quarantine their children if they were in close contact with an infected person. So again, we're not going to require it, but, you know, we want to, I think, honor parents' beliefs that they should be quarantined if appropriate. So again, it's not required.
Just a question, how do other schools look at this? Like Arlen said, we're sitting in the island by ourselves here, all the other schools around us don't have a masking policy, but they have probably kids that got COVID in school.
So I would be surprised if, or are you talking about the first page or the second page? Second page. Okay. I would be surprised if the school would not allow parents to quarantine.
Right, I'm not saying that, I'm saying, I believe the schools tell them they have to stay home so many days. Back.
That's
We're not doing that
isolate.
anymore.
Are you talking about if they have COVID? Because that would be isolation.
Yeah. I'm saying, okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think what I'm saying is kind of consistent with what you would think.
All right,
Yeah.
all right, go
We
ahead.
would not require the
Thank
quarantine,
you for that.
you know, but we would allow it if parents so chose.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Lower on page 2, we would say something like, staff are not required to quarantine. Period. And then get rid of those two, or maybe get rid of the first bullet, and then just keep the, if the staff member develops symptoms, he stays home sick.
So, but back up under staff isolation, you want to add in the KN95.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And then
that
for
gives more
under
flexibility.
quarantining, removing bullet 1.
Yeah, and then eliminating, or just saying, instead of that first sentence, just say staff who are in close contact with it, or staff are not required to quarantine. That's the simplest way. Okay. Period. And then, plus the second bullet, just leave that for Virginia. Under page 3, under the face coverings, I think instead of everything that's under the face coverings title, I think we just say face coverings are optional / recommended. Good.
Do we need to put something in there about required on transportation?
Ooh. Yeah,
That's a federal one. We're just talking about the schools.
Okay, so we don't have to.
But it's good to clarify.
But it wouldn't hurt to.
What hurts to put that in there, yeah.
Federal,
And we can't eliminate the buses.
Right.
or
But
say
we need to
until
remind
federal law
people.
changes,
Right.
then you don't have to alter to get it if the law changes.
Right, yeah, then it's
Does
just
that
kind
make
of
any
done.
sense?
Something like that, or maybe, yeah, unless there's a federal requirement. 'Cause
Or
that
if we
makes
say
it
face
more-
coverings on transportation will follow federal law.
I like that.
And if it changes, it automatically changes.
Yeah.
Good.
And that's it.
And
That wasn't so hard. That's we went through it. Is that a N95 or KN95 mask that you have?
I think it's a KN95.
Are those the same? Oh, the black?
Yeah.
You got that too?
Yeah.
No.
This is Mayo issue.
This is a Dr. Arnold issue, I think.
Am I allowed to make motions?
$5 store.
Yes, all right now.
Well, with those explanations, if that's what he says, he's gonna put in there, I'll make a motion to change the learning plan per the recommendations that were described by this board and Mr. Anderson this evening.
Okay, so a motion to change the learning plan. Can you repeat the rest? I'm sorry.
Per the conversations on the topics that were discussed by board members and Mr. Anderson, because everybody had input on it.
Read that motion over.
Okay,
again.
so we have a motion by Mr. Bryant to change the learning plan per the conversation between board members and Superintendent Anderson.
That's the motion, I'll second it.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Jerks. Any further discussion? Yes.
I normally like to see stuff in writing in front of me, as Mr. Bryant has also said, but I do believe because we have the recording of the meeting that all this stuff will come through as directed at the board. So that is why because of conflicting documents with the mass thing, I'm going to support doing it this way. That's my comments.
I don't know if this needs to be an amendment, but when would this take effect? Effective also at midnight tonight, or?
Yeah, I think the same time the face mandate.
Yeah.
I made my motion to include same time frame as the mask mandate, lifting the mask mandate.
I'm willing to amend the second.
Okay.
To the same wording.
Okay.
They might as well mirror each other, that's a good point.
Yes. So we have a motion by Mr. Bryant to change the learning plan for the conversation between board members and Superintendent Anderson, effective 2/22/22 at midnight, seconded by Mr. Dukes.
Would that be 2:20?
So that we have
So is that midnight? Or?
Midnight tonight.
Yeah, I would just say midnight tonight, so.
That's what I meant.
Is that going to be effective?
That's
Yes.
222.
Yeah.
Or, well,
Because 223 will be 12:01.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, in that case, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. And that carries as well. All right.
Good job.
Thank you again to the COVID response team and for rolling with the decisions and changes as they come.
thank you for keeping us safe.
The only other part about the COVID-related data that I'd like to stress is that we are inviting or allowing volunteers to be back in our buildings. We don't want to just open it up to just anyone. to come and have, lunch with their kids, that'd be kind of a visitor, but we are allowing, more volunteers to be present. So that's a good change. There were some concerns expressed by teachers thinking that we would mandate it, and that's not the case. Teachers don't have to have volunteers, but at least we're allowing it, if they go through administration. And one idea that's come up from a couple of different groups is related to some of the high school issues going on. And there are some parents and some community members who are interested in being in the schools more often. And so the high school admin is taking a look at that. There are some things that we have to be careful about, as far as confidentiality in terms of what those people, might do. But if we can sort that out, then we'll have, more adults in our hallways and other places.
Is that on your administrative report?
I can't remember if I.
I don't remember. I remember seeing something.
Yeah. Because I'll talk about it later if we get to that, unless you want me to talk about my thoughts on that now. It's up to you guys. I thought I saw it, that's why
I did see it somewhere too.
Before we move on, Ms. Howard had raised the question about what the work from home protocols were. Did you want to respond to that now, or is that?
Yeah, it's definitely a human resources issue. I don't think the COVID response team, I can certainly review it, make some suggestions, but it's an HR thing. I believe that Ms. French has already crafted something in that regard, and so it really isn't a stretch to bring it up at our next meeting.
I formulated my thoughts. The district needs an employee pandemic plan for work equity. The teachers had the 10 days of COVID pay, and they didn't get it. People that work from home because they want to work from home that day because they can work flexible, they get it. So that's where I'm saying the district needs an employee pandemic plan for work equity. So Ms. French is drafting something around that.
Do you think it has to be pandemic related?
I don't know what the work plan was prior to the pandemic.
Well, are there currently policies in place for like a snow day? Who can do work from home and who can't for that type of thing? I would think that it's gonna fall under
Specific.
similar parameters of.
I would stick with the pandemic plan. It's not going away. The pandemic isn't going away, and people are still going to continue to be sick. So what does that look like for work equity? Within contracts and within who does, a second grade teacher can't just call the principal and be like, hey, I'm not coming in today, can I work from home? It doesn't, it doesn't work that way for equity.
Yeah, and we'll include this as part of the plan. There are some key people in the district who, if they're at home because they have COVID or something, we need them to do their work. I mean, there are some things that we just cannot.
We can't pay
Payroll, for
somebody.
example.
Yeah, but we can't pay people to work if they're sick and they're taking a sick day.
I know, that's what I mean, is that,
So that's-
if they're at home, they would get paid for their work while they're at home. So there are examples where it's critical to the operation of our school district.
I would say there should be a backup plan for those people if they're sick.
And, we can talk about the backup plan, but it won't be possible to do it in every circumstance.
Can
So,
we add this to a future board meeting and move on?
Yep, I think that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else with COVID related?
Make it go away.
thank you, by the
If my
way.
gavel is a magic wand.
Yeah. Thank you for the discussion and for the decisions tonight.
Okay. Were you looking to see if there was anything else, or is,
I didn't see it, but I just looked through it.
for
Yeah, always.
the volunteering?
Right.
Is payroll, just really quick, is payroll automated? Like, do we have an automated payroll system?
No.
Wouldn't that be the backup plan?
Well, I shouldn't say, we don't have, I mean, we have a payroll system, but, you know, there's a lot of data entry into that payroll system.
We don't have an automated one where people just,
Well, they do it online, don't fill out the timesheet online.
No, they don't.
There's gotta be a way to do that.
Oh, yeah, I mean, there are lots of programs.
like that would, to me, in my head, that's the backup system.
How does somebody submit time off?
That part's automated, but the actual time cards themselves are not automated.
Everybody's got to fill out a time card and send it into.
And there's no sign.
If they're hourly, yeah.
Yeah, if they're hourly.
That's,
Really, there's no way to do it on.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I mean, we priced out, different options to do the, online time cards. I'm a huge proponent of it. So it's just a matter of when we do it.
The workplace had $143 a month for the 4 people, and they take care of everything. Payroll.
well, because think of the time it takes to sign everything.
No, this is automated.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like,
Automated.
right now it takes,
Pay the taxes.
Oh, yeah, of course, that part's automated.
Okay.
It's, the actual, I work 8 hours on a certain day, that part is.
Got to be approved by somebody, that's all, by the supervisor.
Yeah.
Well, we could add that to future discussions, I
Yeah.
think.
I'm a huge proponent of making that as automated as possible. But it's not, you know, we want to go slow and make sure that everyone who's involved with the process is good with the process.
Right.
Okay, so then we are up to school board reports. We have, jump to the wrong page. There are some notes from the negotiations committee, and we should have some agreements coming to the March 7th meeting for approval. Those are pending approval from their individual unions.
If I could add, I mistitled that document. It says agenda committee notes.
I thought so.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. It should have been
Oh, yeah, there it is.
negotiations committee.
Yeah, we really were busy with that, weren't we?
I know, I was like-
Negotiation notes, and I go, I went to committee agenda.
I am sorry. It was my fault.
I didn't even read that part.
Yeah.
I was just reading the rest of it.
Great summary of the negotiations committee, but it's nothing to do with the agenda committee. So my apologies.
I don't know that there's really much else to report on that, but you can look forward to that for March 7th.
I have my GCED meeting tomorrow night.
Okay,
Thank you.
so we'll look forward to info about that. For the student school board, we have yet to have our first meeting, but I have 5 kids signed up so far. So, you know, we will start with that, and hopefully we will add more as we move along with that. Do we have any other reports for the board liaisons?
Calendar committee met, I wasn't able to make it, but it's coming to, they're talking about the 23-24 calendar years. And so we're getting ahead of ourselves, and Jen Grove's doing a fantastic job leading that, setting that up, getting people on track and staying that. So more information on that to come.
And I had that kind of as a tentative coming in March.
Sometime.
Is that still the?
Yeah. I'm not positive, but that's my understanding too.
Yeah, maybe March or April.
March or April.
Okay.
Yeah, during the discussion there, you know, some teachers want to wait until after the week-long spring break in
Sure.
March, just to see how it goes, and so it's probably April.
April sounds good to me.
Gotcha. All right, then I believe we are up to administrative reports.
You know, I'm just going to briefly touch on a few. First of all, there were questions about community walkers, and so Don Weddern responded to that.
Yep.
Also, there's a question about emergency medical funds. Ann Robertson gave a presentation at Kiwanis meeting and also included the statement attached there in the newsletter. And so I think those are the 2 primary reasons why there were some donations at a recent meeting. There are some questions about post-secondary enrollment options, or PSEO. And so attached to the administrative reports are the answers to the questions that were posed. So it kind of gives you a background about PSEO. Staffing and substitute updates are included. We already talked about the school calendar. Ann Robertson is still working on the we're continually working on the Speakers Bureau, which is important information for our operating levy referendum. The RFP for educational planning is something that Ms. Howard just asked earlier tonight, and we can certainly come back to the board to discuss that. At the last board meeting, there was discussion about possibly doing a demographic study, especially because of our declining residents in the school district and the aging population in the school district. That might be something we want to consider. Hazel Reinhardt was from the formerly of the state's demographic office. I think she's retired. She's top notch. She put in a proposal for $5,000 to do that kind of work. However, one or more of the educational planners that we're interviewing may include that as part of their proposal. So, yeah, we want to wait on that until we kind of get a better feeling. And then you can see the status of the COVID-related federal grants. I don't think anything changed since last time. That's all I have.
Okay, somewhere I read about the volunteer. Anyways, just a quick comment on volunteers in the building, Carson. I know that you will be diligent in background checks and those types of things.
No.
My concern is with the elevated level of student behavior. I don't want to set up a community member or a volunteer to be put in a position where they're not prepared for, and put them in a position of like reacting or not doing the right thing if it's a crisis situation or if it's a student behavior situation. I would hate for somebody to, or anybody to be in a situation they're not prepared for or trained for or certified for. So I love the idea of volunteers coming in. It's just changed so much because there's so much going on.
Completely agree. Even 20 years ago, hopefully it was the same thing was being said, because you never want to put a volunteer into a tough situation where they have to make a decision about discipline or something. I never would want to do that. Also, I'll add that we want to be very careful about confidentiality.
Mm-hmm.
That's critical, and there's some other issues too. So, yeah, we're willing to consider it, but we need to step through a lot of different steps to make sure that it's the right thing to do.
Is there an onboarding process for volunteers?
I do not believe there's a formal onboarding process, but certainly if we have multiple adults in our buildings for something like this, for example, it'd be at the high school most likely, and so the high school administrative team would need to make it very clear on what's expected. Some schools, I don't think I've ever done this before, but some schools actually have a volunteer handbook that's given whenever they agree to be a volunteer. So I'm not promising that right now, but I think the onboarding would have to include that kind of information.
Yeah, I think even if there wasn't a face-to-face onboarding for everybody, or like in a group setting, something like a handbook would be good. We certainly, as subs, we get kind of our list of what we are and are not allowed to do because we're different than staff members.
Right.
And so something like that would be helpful. Mr. Bryant?
Thank you. I was the one that sent in an email about a month ago or so, because I had a resident reach out and say they're looking at volunteering in the classroom. And so that's how they kind of came up there, kind of twisted around a little bit at the last meeting, but we got it straightened around. My only hope is we get these people, we contact them right away to let them know if they're interested. We just don't let them hang out there thinking, and we want to use them, but they don't know we're interested in using them. So reach out to them. Have somebody, I don't know who that is, that's up to you to decide. But if we have people who want to volunteer and they qualify, let's reach out to them right away to let them know, yeah, this is the process, it gets you going. So they just don't think we're not interested in it.
Right. Yeah, and we have a lot of volunteers, like with our sports programs, some people who volunteer in classrooms, including retired teachers.
Right.
They're all over it. It's one area, it's one HR issue that we should tackle. Would be the onboarding expectations of our volunteers. They've done great work for us, but that's probably the best time to really tighten it up.
Especially with the referendum coming up, getting the community involved more, it would be a positive thing in that.
Okay, unless we have anything else, I believe we are on to consent agenda. Does anybody have anything they would like to pull from the consent agenda?
If I may, Matt,
Yes.
there was a thing on PSEO. Did you,
Yes.
did we want to talk about that at all? I brought that up.
Yeah, there is.
Under your reports, after you report the agenda, it said, if I may.
Yeah.
A parent, actually somebody that works in the school, contacted me over PSEO concerns. Not that they're against PSEO, just their young daughter or son, I can't remember what, 14, 15-year-old, went over there, signed up, and ended up, told this and that, and I'm kind of shortcutting everything here. She didn't go. And they said, well, they said, she wants to withdraw. Well, she missed her deadline, him or her. And they said, well, why didn't somebody call? Well, they needed to go under their Southeast Minnesota email account and cancel. Well, they never set it up. So her point, this staff person's whole point was, one is, why are they allowing this to happen? Yeah, we probably signed something not knowing what it was, but our daughter or son didn't have the mindset to know, well, I'm just not going to go, I don't have to worry about it. So the school district's out the money because this person was worried about the money that the school was paying for somebody that didn't go. So this wanted to have some type of dialogue with the school, and there's a Vanessa, I think, involved. Vanessa Jones. Maybe I need to talk to her, or she needs to, look at, is there a phone call be made? Hey, Jane Smith, how come you're not going to the class? Well, I don't want to go anymore. Okay, we'll just drop you then, withdraw. So I don't know if that's something that is probably explained, but when you're talking 14, 15-year-olds, they may not catch all that explanation. So this person was worried about the money, that the school district might be out because of some kids are not going, and not understanding that what it takes to sign up and what it takes to withdraw. So
there are definitely, some issues because we're working with a different educational institution. And, I have personal experience with a child who has kind of gone through and had similar frustrations. And so one of the many good things that came out of our negotiations recently with teachers, teachers had requested extra compensation for one of their members to kind of serve as the primary liaison with Southeast Tech. In the end, we didn't get more money per day, but we did agree, not during negotiations, but kind of a separate thing, where we agreed to additional days, including time during the summer, so that Vanessa can kind of be that contact person for PSEO classes. So I'm not saying everything is solved just because we've done that, but I thought that was one of the good results of our negotiations. It was discussed, and at least we have a better plan now. In the past, all this would happen in the summer, and we didn't have a contact person here at the school to really take care of it. So hopefully it'll improve there. I know Vanessa has been looking at some other processes, and hopefully we'll step it up even more.
And this was not a slam at all against PSEO. They're fully supportive of it.
Right.
It's just, there's some things that could be probably tied together better.
Definitely, yeah.
I have 2 kids who have gone through PSEO, and there are a lot of holes in the system.
Okay.
And
You understand what I'm talking about?
yeah, absolutely. And one of the things to that specific concern is just that, so 10th grade is your youngest age that you can enroll in PSEO. Regardless of how old that student is, Southeast or whichever college, university they're taking PSEO through treats them like an adult. So even though my children well, one is still a minor, and taking PSEO classes, I have no access to her educational records at Southeast unless she specifically authorizes that, unlike the regular public school system. So that is something that will not change, but yes, having a counselor more.
Can she sign a waiver?
She can, yes, and my kids have, but
Yes.
not every kid does.
And they don't even
And
know that
that's
the
fair.
waiver's available or that they even have to do one.
Usually they walk you through that at Southeast, but certainly there are times when things get missed, especially in times of COVID.
I'm glad this is going forward.
Okay, now on to consent agenda, I believe. Does anybody have anything they would like to pull from the consent agenda? If not, I am looking for a motion to approve it.
So moved.
Second. Okay, so we have a motion to approve the consent agenda by Ms. Tower, second by Ms. Tift. Any discussion?
I'll just say on number 4, Mr. Norton, I'm glad to see him willing to stay on during time of need.
Yeah, he's done exceptionally good work, and I think he works really well with Mr. Nemenich and others throughout the district. So, yeah, we're very fortunate.
All right. There's no further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh.
Oh, it's
All right, well, there you go.
Unless you pull an item.
All those opposed say nay. None. All right. That passes.
That's why you have to pull an item to discuss.
Only to just, even to just mention it.
Okay. That was my fault.
That's all right. No problem.
Donations.
I got my comment in. That's
Yeah,
okay.
it was a good comment too.
Donations and grants.
I'd like to thank Mark and Valerie Estabrook for their donation to the Emergency Medical Needs Fund.
I would like to use the resolution authorizing or accepting the donations and grants as presented in our agenda.
Second. Okay, so there is a motion to approve the resolution accepting donations and grants by Mr. Dirk, second by Ms. Swift. And because it is a resolution, we will do a roll call, beginning with Ms. Tower.
Aye.
Ms. Tift. Aye. Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
Mr. Dirk.
Aye.
And Chair votes aye. So that passes. And again, thank you to the Estabrooks. Okay, let me get back to the right page. Trying to do this without printed out materials. All right, we are on to business items. So first up is long-term substitute teachers. I'll turn that over to Mr. Anderson.
We hire some long-term substitute teachers directly by the school district and others long-term substitute teachers through Teachers on Call. We've had, it's all, much of it is dictated by state law, especially if we're doing the hiring. We have not been receiving transcript and experience information promptly from Teachers on Call. And so our recommendation tonight is to require the school district to pay the lowest lane and the lowest step for a person hired through Teachers on Call, unless and until the substitute provides documentation showing education and experience placing them at a higher lane and step. So again, it's a bureaucratic step. We still want the people. We know they meet our qualifications, but we want to get them started at that lower wage until they can prove that they deserve a higher lane and or step. So that's a suggested change.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the pay provisions for long-term substitutes.
So moved. I move to approve the pay provisions for long-term substitutes as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, so we We have a motion to approve the pay provisions for lunchroom substitutes as presented by Ms. Tower, second by Ms. Bryant, Mr. Bryant, sorry. Is there any discussion?
No problem.
I have a question. Carson, can you just give us like a 30-second background on where this is coming from?
Where the,
Yep, I see your background, but was there, like, was it HR, like, it just?
oh, yeah. Ms. Paradis and Ms. French are the ones who approached me and indicated that we've had some issues with, getting all the paperwork to justify higher lanes and steps.
Yeah.
We didn't want to just take their word for it. We want the evidence with us. So they're the ones who brought it to me. I looked at the current language and made adjustments, but it's consistent with what they requested.
Okay.
That's what you're looking for?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Any other discussion? And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay? All right, so that passes. And we are on to our revised budget.
Jackie Paradis is here to present the revised budget, which is the same as what we had discussed during the last workshop. We're just looking for formal approval. Do you have anything to add?
I do not have anything to add. There is a summary of the revised budget just under the cover of the budget documents. As you can see, we would add $214,692 to the unassigned fund balance, bringing it to 14.42%. Overall, we would use $270,433 of fund balance. That's a conglomerate of all the funds. The majority of that coming out of the construction fund. Are there questions?
Do you have your hand raised for this?
I did not, but I have a question probably.
Go for it.
Thank you.
Brian.
I don't know how take my hand off.
That's stuck too.
Mine's stuck too. Okay, take it right. I'm gonna take me off there. Jackie, I know you talked about your narrative parts about, let's get back to it here. We'll probably hash this all over and I don't recall. We've lowered our ADMs, 13. What do you mean by updated health insurance contribution with January renewals rate? Is that we lowered our expenses? Is that what you're saying? Or?
We did. When we projected our health insurance renewal for calendar year 2022, we had projected a 10% increase, and we realized a 5% increase when we came to that renewal.
Okay. So by the ADMs going down means less revenue.
Correct.
So the way to do it is reduce your expenses at some point. Okay. And then food revenue and expenses. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I think anything we can do now, next several months of this budget, since we're getting into the finishing up so shortly the third quarter of this budget, and then we can do in the next 4 months or so to keep our expenses down will help us for the next year. They call it the budget reconciliation. Is that what you're calling it? Lower that number. Anything we can do now will help us not have to do a greater number for coming up for calendar budget year 22-23. So with that, I'll make a motion to approve the revised budget as presented.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the revised budget as presented by Mr. Bryant, seconded by Ms. Tower. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And that passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for sticking it out for a couple hours with us.
No problem.
Mr. Taylor is here to discuss the scheduled maintenance for the track and tennis courts. It's all yours, Mr. Taylor.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So I just want to take a couple minutes to go over a quick few things. The Red Wing tennis project that we put off for a year due to the COVID. You know, we were thinking extreme high prices, and so we were intending to do it last year. We kind of put it off to this year, and now we have proceeded to move forward with that. You can see in your packets we have the recommendation letter from our engineer on the who bid and who we've chosen, or the recommendation put forth. That tennis court project that we are doing, that tennis court will be 8 years old this summer. So the two vendors that we have chosen or that are recommended are vendors that we've worked with over the years and have had pretty good outcomes with them. We intended to start this project right after school started, which would be, I believe, the 6th, but there is Paul Hartman reached out to me along with the track coaches, and there is a state track meet the 9th and the 11th. So they would like to use the track for practicing during that week. So we have put off a project start date of the 13th, I believe it is, which would be that Monday, which I've reached out to both contractors, the contractor for the track, and they see no problem with that. On your other sheets that you can look at, I just wanted to kind of go through some of our 23 projects that we're looking at. One is the high school cafeteria wireless PA sound system. That needs to be updated to meet the current FCC regulations. That sound system currently that we use is also being used by cell phones within the school. So with every kid having a cell phone and stuff, there's issues that it cuts out quite a bit. So we'll be working on that project in 23, along with the little theater wireless sound system. Same thing there, the same issues as the cafe. We will be working with the city in 23, or maybe this year, I'll have to see, but when we redo our parking lots, and we just redid the Burnside and the high school parking lot, usually after a year, they recommend doing crack sealing and sealer. So we typically like to work with the city when they have their contractor come into the city. And we do that because they're already in town. And we kind of feed off of them. When they get done with them, they come to, work with us. So we'll be working with them to do either Burnside and the high school. Usually every couple of years we do our Arc Flash certification. In 2023, the high school and Cobble are up for that, so we're working with them on that. OSHA is required for the safety of anyone who does electrical work on our systems. 23, we're also looking at replacing the Twin Bluff pool water heater. And then we also have replacing the parking lot for Cobble in 2023. That's our plan. We don't know if we should wait another year again to see how that goes with pricing on contractors and their workloads. I know later this spring, myself and Kevin will update you and bring our updated 24 LTFM and capital recommendations to the board for approval. So tonight it's more the recommendation letter from Larson Engineering on our two engineers that were picked for the track project and the tennis court project.
I move to accept the bid of $91,000 for athletic field services for scheduled track maintenance, and the bid of $50,745 for Upper Midwest Athletic Construction for scheduled tennis court maintenance with a comment.
Have a second?
Second.
All right, so Mr. Bryant, I'll let you start us out with discussion.
Thank you. I don't question, just thank you, Alan, for this. both bids are under the estimate from the LTF money that you projected, which is good news. And we'll get them updated. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you, guys.
All right, is there any further discussion or questions? All right, then we have a motion to accept those bids by motion made by Mr. Bryant, second by Ms. Howard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. And that carries.
Hey, Alan?
Yes.
Alan, turn your microphone on.
Yeah, you might want to mute yourself there.
Oh, no, keep it on. I want to hear what's in.
I think we all recognize the sentiment.
Yeah, it's late.
Okay, we
Our
are
busy day today.
on to legal advisors.
That just made my month. So generally in January, the board approves the legal counsel for the year. But this year we decided to issue a request for proposals for that legal counsel. We received 2 proposals. One was from Kennedy and Graven, and the other was from Ratwick, and I can't remember the other partners of the firm. Both highly reputable in Minnesota school law. I know attorneys, and I've worked with attorneys from both firms. I've never had bad advice from anyone in either firm. They're both top notch. In the end, the rates were essentially the same. I think maybe Kennedy and Graven was a little bit less, but nothing that would sway the decision one way or the other. We did interview attorneys from both firms. And after the interviews and some reference checks and some thinking, the recommendation is to designate Kennedy and Graven as the primary legal advisor for the school district, and then also to authorize the superintendent, business manager, or chair to initiate contact with legal counsel.
Ms. Howard?
Who was on the interview committee?
Don Weathern, Jackie Paradis, and myself.
Was it a unanimous vote?
No.
What was the differential?
Well, first of all, Kennedy and Graven has worked with our school district for multiple years.
Okay.
When I first came here, there's a gentleman named Tim Palmatier, who's a primary attorney. And so I worked with him, for many years. He chose to become legal counsel for Osseo Public Schools. And so since that time, I've been working with Greg Madsen. And there was another gentleman who joined the firm about 5 or 6 years, Adam Wattenberger, I think. And so I've been working with both of them, depending on the issue for multiple years. So they know the district really well. And I think that actually helps us in the long run, in terms of knowing the issues and how we do things, what kind of path we typically follow with employee investigations or student discipline issues, whatever the case may be. I have to admit I was torn between the two. And then the week after the interviews, I had to deal with 2 urgent issues. One dealing with a student discipline issue, and then another one involving a parent from another district who was going to be attending an activity here in the high school. So they're both urgent, needed information. And, I called our current attorney, Kennedy and Graven. With one issue, I got a hold of Greg right away, responded just like he always does. Another time I called about the parent issue, and he wasn't available at that time, probably on a phone call or something. And so I called his partner, Adam. Got through right away, got great advice both times. And I thought, we should stick with Kennedy and Graven. So sort of a gut reaction, but we did the interview process. Both fantastic firms, both very similarly priced. But I think Kennedy and Graven really understands our district, and I have their cell phone. I can call them day or night if there's a school-related issue. So that's why I came to that recommendation.
Do you normally interview everybody for RFPs? All different things that we have RFPs for. Do you interview people?
Let's see. Not for buildings and grounds related issues. Typically, that would be, we get the proposals, and then Kevin Johnson, sometimes Alan Gaylor will look at it and we'll follow up with questions. We did do it in this case for legal counsel, and we're doing it for the educational planner as well.
Well, that's RFPs for something new, but I'm just trying to think, we actually did bids for, and we usually take the cheapest, lowest cost one. They're both very equitable or very even, so I didn't see a dollar amount on here, I just saw similar.
Oh, yeah, and Jackie, may have the numbers at her fingertips, but they both charge $235 per hour if it's a partner of the firm. So those match. I think Kennedy and Graven had a very slightly lower rate for maybe some law clerk work or something like that, but really they were essentially the same.
Ms. Tower?
I'll let Jackie go.
Okay, go ahead, Curtis.
Yes, for the two main rates quoted, there was $235 an hour for the partner, and I want to say for the next level down attorney, it was $150. Both of those rates were the same for both firms. I believe where they differentiated was on the paralegal work, but it was within dollars.
Thank you.
Yeah. I was personally hoping that one of the firms would be like $30 or $40 per hour cheaper. I mean, I was really hoping so, and unfortunately it didn't work out. Yeah.
Right, because to date, we've spent over $500,000 on that law firm. And I can't say whether or not their advice has been stellar, half stellar. But I'm a big fan of change and a big fan of new eyes on new situations. And yes, they bring experience and they bring some credibility to the table, but the fact that it wasn't a unanimous vote, and I'm glad you were honest, leaves me some reservation on if it's just your gut feeling versus what two females in the office have to say about a situation. I'm just curious to know, what their thoughts were and around the other firm, if they had a gut reaction.
Yeah, we discussed it, and like I say, it was not unanimous, but I'm the one who works with the legal firm more than Jackie or Don. And I know the situations that we've had in terms of student discipline, employee investigations, accommodations, sometimes special education work, and, bond counsel, for example, and now even election work. And both firms are high quality. The lawyers in both firms are high quality. I've worked with other law firms too, Ryder Bennett, Knudsen Flynn. I've worked with lawyers at both of these firms, and I honestly don't think I can think of a time when I've received bad advice from anyone in any of those firms. So, I think having experience with the district is actually really important. And like I say, I've always received good advice from the lawyers at Kennedy and Graven, and I don't think there's a reason to change.
Discussion? Or we're looking for a motion?
I'll make the motion to designate the law firm Kennedy and Graven as the primary legal advisor for the school district as presented.
Okay, so we have a motion by Ms. Tift. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Terps. Any further discussion?
I'll speak up here. I asked for the RFP to get it, and I guess I was looking for a dollar amount really, or that's the interview, so I was kind of wondering why we started interviewing certain people. So, but also the other, I'll go along with this time. I'm just kind of concerned about the dollar amount that we're spending. You know, we're paying you, we got an attorney, and now we have like $350,000 to $375,000 we're paying. We're hoping, I would hope that some of that decision making would fall on your shoulders instead of, what we pay $160,000 last year, $135,000. So, and I get that there's reasons to call an attorney. I'm not against attorneys at all, but we got to keep an eye on that because that's just something else that we're not being able to do. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, well, yeah, the last thing that we want to be doing is spending high amounts on legal service.
Exactly.
I mean, you know, we'd much rather spend it on other student-focused things. But, you know, I'm responsible for representing the district, for defending the district, for trying to do the right thing. And oftentimes that means legal advice. So, you know, regardless of the law firm, I think it's really important to do the right thing whenever we can. So that's one way to do it.
And I don't disagree with that. I just say you say you can call them anytime you want. Well, every time you call that number, that meter starts clicking.
$235 an hour.
And they probably pay you by 10 minutes. They probably bill you by the 10-minute mark, which most attorneys in the past, but not all, I should say. I've heard some do, allegedly. How's that? So I just keep that in mind.
You know, I don't know if we've ever discussed this at a board meeting. And if you want to wait on this, but I can at least throw out the concept. You know, some of the bigger school districts hire full-time attorneys, like Osceola Public Schools, multiple attorneys. There are some school districts that are slightly larger than us who, well, at least one, and I presume others, who actually hire like an HR director who has a legal background. And it's worked well in some of those other districts. And I'm not suggesting that for here right now, but at least it's in the back of my mind. You know, the positive in that is that it's a salaried person, and so we can get all the work that we need from him or her. The negative is that it would be probably impossible to find someone with the depth of knowledge with all school-related issues. So there would still be some work with a special ed attorney or, you know, some special arrangements. But, you know, we've looked at that in the past, and actual attorney salaries, you know, for, you know, situations like that are not particularly high. And so that would be something that I'd be willing to work out if the board is interested in that. So again, the only reason we want to do that is if we're going to save money, you know, on the arrangement. But it's a possibility.
Ms. Short?
This is a very tricky situation in the big picture. On paper, it's very simple. But we have two people, obviously, who didn't go with the recommendation. Because if they had, then it would be unanimous, or then it would be majority. Or was it, am I wrong?
There's one person who's against the recommendation, and I think the other person is either neutral or in favor of getting engraved.
Okay, so when I said unanimous, I meant the other two were not going with it. That's my mistake.
Oh.
Yep, that's my mistake.
That's
So,
no problem.
yeah, I just want to clarify. That's a lot of money. And I know we have to spend money on legal services, but I recall when we were in a conversation around the hockey situation, and I asked if it was a conflict of interest for one of the board members to be voting on that situation, and in the middle of the meeting, you picked up the phone and called the attorney. To me, that was a very telling moment, and I'm not so sure it was an attorney's call to make in that moment. I felt like the board member should have owned that moment. And so I felt like you made the call too quick to the attorney. And so when you talk about your relationship with them, I'm just hesitant, actually not in support of this, because I felt like the board member should have owned their, and this isn't saying anything against that board member or for that board member, but I feel like as board members, we don't have the protection in the moment to defer to attorneys. I couldn't have called the attorney to get backing on anything, but in that moment, the board member didn't have to honor their own responsibility to their decisions. And I felt that that was very familiar for you to just pick up the phone and bail somebody out of a situation.
Well, I don't know if bailing out would be the right term. I don't remember the specific conversation with the attorney, but I know that he picked up the call in the evening and he addressed a conflict between board members about an important issue. So, you know, it was a very short conversation, and I don't know if that should be the determining factor as far as who should be the legal advisor.
I think that just lends to more different eyes on different situations. In that moment, it felt like it was your assistant superintendent or kind of your right-hand person, and that's not what the position, in my understanding, is, unless I'm getting it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, a legal advisor, regardless of who it is an independent person, in our case, because he's not an employee of the school district. Independent person who gives the best advice that he or she can possibly give. So certainly not an assistant in any way. He does not act, because I think we should act a certain way. We need to explore these things. We need to weigh options, and then then I need to make decisions. So, or Amy French or Jackie Paradis, whoever is in that decision-making role at the time. So, he was available and was able to answer the question. So at least we kind of knew how to proceed. If it was a conflict of interest, then right away at that meeting, I would say that, well, this is a possible conflict of interest. According to the attorney, it's likely a conflict of interest. And then that may have changed the course of the discussion. I don't remember the conversation or actually what I shared at the meeting after that call.
I guess it lends to, I have a bias around what happened that evening, and I did inquire with MSBA, and they told me different than what the attorney had told you around that situation. So I'm just really questioning the whole thing. I don't feel comfortable with it, and I don't feel that it's in the best interest of the district. So I'm just going to be voting no on it.
Yeah, I need to respond to that though. I don't think people at the MSBA would ever say, they often say you should contact an attorney about such and such. So, I mean, that's their common thing.
Please don't accuse me of lying on line.
Oh, no, I'm not accusing you of lying. I'm just saying.
But you're telling me that's not what they would say, and that's exactly what they said. That it was a conflict of interest. And so that's what I'm saying. So.
Yeah. The other thing is that MSBA reps are not available, during, at least I don't have their personal cell phone numbers or work cell phone numbers to call. If they would have been available that night, that's the better call, because they don't charge extra for it, but it's an evening meeting, and so that's why it should got the way it did. Otherwise, I would give Terry Morrow a call. He gives unbelievably good advice every time I call him. Or email him.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, there is a motion to designate the law firm Kennedy and Graven as the primary legal advisor for the school district, made by Ms. Tift, second by Mr. Dirks. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
And that passes. All right. Yes.
I move to authorize the superintendent, business manager, and board chair to initiate contact with legal counsel.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Mr. Dierks to authorize superintendent, business manager, and board chair to initiate contact with legal counsel. Made by Mr. Dierks, second by Ms. Tibbs. Is there any discussion? All right. In that case, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
And that passes. All right. So we are up to upcoming meetings and future topics.
Yeah, if I could mention one thing is that in subsequent meetings, the plan is to have up to a year's worth of meeting dates and topics. So it wasn't included here today because Lisa and I weren't able to connect before the meeting, but that will be kind of a norm. And so I think that will help a lot with planning and with work at the agenda committee meeting and those kinds of things. So in subsequent meetings, that's what we'll be doing.
I think most of it is there.
Oh, maybe it's just not
On
my
the
paper
background?
version. Okay, well, better yet, it is there. Thank you, Lisa.
And of course, it's all, subject to change if there are things that need to get brought up first and other things get bumped. But yeah, let me know if there's anything else that we need to add. I wrote some notes about things for tonight.
Did my hand get raised there?
Nope. There you are.
I had it raised.
Mr. Bryant.
Since he brought up this attorney thing, it's something I've had conversations with him, whoever. As our workshop, since he brought it up, I'd like to see it on a workshop, just the whole makeup there. Maybe there's some way we can make this thing work. We don't look at it or discuss it. We don't know.
Sure.
Yeah, and it could be either by itself or maybe part of the personnel plan. So we thought, whatever the board wants to do.
Ms. Tower?
Yeah, I would like a topic on conflict of interest around, I know that Arlen and Tim excuse themselves often from voting on certain issues. So I would like to know what the parameters are around conflict of interest, in many capacities, and not to belabor the point back in last February when we were voting on something different. This is future lookings at how do we hold ourselves accountable to.
Well, we're gonna talk, aren't we gonna, at some point, for open meeting law?
Mm-hmm.
We can tie that together.
Perfect.
MSBA would be able to provide information about both.
Yeah, and that reminds me, I will follow back around with it, but I had reached out to ask if they had someone who could do a training with us about open meeting law and just hadn't heard back, so I will follow up on that again.
They should have somebody that do the MSBA training. So.
Yes, I was just wondering if there's somebody who could be either online or in person for us, during a workshop
Some
time.
documents to use.
Yeah. Okay. And then also to add to meetings, I have the work equity and what was the other thing I have on here? Safety coordinator update and follow up with Mr. Norton about discipline. Any other things we need to add right now?
Just one point.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson, you may want to get hold of Terry Johnson by email. Tell him about our motion on the mask tonight, because who knows, if we'll get up there, the kids may think they don't need to wear it on the bus.
Right, so I'm thinking the staff needs to be aware.
No, that's his job to let the staff know.
Yeah.
But I think
I'm gonna send them a message right now.
just a suggestion.
Yeah, no
Why
problem.
why not address it before it happens?
Okay,
Proaction.
then I think we're ready for a motion to adjourn.
So,
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Bryant, second by Ms. Tower. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. All right, we are adjourned at 8:33 p.m.
Stick a fork in it, we're done. Stick a fork in it, we're done.
I thought you said it was a fourth thing.
No.
That's an interesting way of.
That was a saying there.
Feels like it, though.